Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the case of Linda Curry. To avoid tragedy, sometimes it is enough just to walk away, to leave someone who behaves strangely and potentially dangerously, but in some heartbreaking cases, the victim and the killer remain fated to be together. Leading to an irreversible outcome, Linda was once a charming woman with impeccable taste. She balanced her career during the week with dancing on weekends, which helped her relax and stay active even in her 40s. She looked stunning with her education. Linda achieved professional success, earned a good income, and maintained her perfect image. In 1989, she met Paul Curry at work. Paul quickly impressed Linda with his intelligence. Their relationship gradually developed into marriage, which took place on September 12, 1992, in Las Vegas. Compared to the accomplished Linda, Paul seemed rather ordinary, leaving many to wonder why such a successful woman was attracted to him. Although Linda spoke of him with admiration, their friends felt the couple lacked harmony. Paul was short and not particularly noticeable. Except for his intelligence, he lacked wealth and career success, which he often attributed to his age. Many found Linda's choice unusual. Her friends felt she was simply flattering herself by being with a younger man who was 13 years her junior, about a month after the wedding. Linda called her friend Mary Siebold to tell her that Paul wanted to buy her $1 million life insurance policy, and Paul is the beneficiary. Soon after, Linda began to experience strange and disturbing changes in her life. Previously full of life and energy, she was now tired all the time, and her appearance was affected. These symptoms caused Linda's relatives and Mary to begin to suspect that Paul might be the cause of Linda's declining health. Paul firmly denied these suspicions and even threatened to sue Mary for slander after she made some unfounded comments. However, this did not alleviate her suspicion that Paul might be behind Linda's difficulties. Mary continued to contact Linda and noticed that she was becoming increasingly weak, sensing that something was wrong. Mary advised Linda to leave Paul, believing that he could be a threat. However, Linda insisted that Paul was not the cause of her health problems. She often spoke highly of Paul, describing him as a loving and devoted husband who showed his affection through compliments and romantic gestures. Linda believed that her problems could stem from the stress of her job rather than her relationship. Despite seeing doctors regularly, Linda's health continued to worsen. The medications prescribed had no noticeable effect. Back in the 1960s, when Mary and Linda worked at a nuclear power plant, Linda was known for her impeccable fashion sense, and Mary was often surprised by how she maintained her figure despite enjoying food. During their regular meetings at work and outings, the two women formed a strong bond, sharing everything about their lives. Mary admired Linda's exceptional taste as she skillfully matched outfits, shoes, bags, and accessories. Mary and Linda shared a passion for fashion and beauty. They were also ambitious, career-focused individuals determined to succeed in their respective fields. Linda advanced quickly in her career. She started as a secretary and eventually became a manager with her own office. Linda had been married twice, but had ended both marriages. Afterward, she began a long-term relationship with an insurance agent named Bill Sandretto. They dated for over 8 years, but they never chose to get married. Primarily because Bill valued his independence, Linda and Bill went through multiple breakups during this time, but they always reconciled since the 1980s. Linda has become the head of the department and started earning a good income. Linda was enthusiastic about spending money, but she made an effort to avoid impulsive purchases. She managed her budget well and planned to make several major purchases. In addition to maintaining her fashionable appearance, she bought a car and a spacious house in San Clemente, California. This house was the dream home she had envisioned for many years. Finally, she was able to buy it for herself, marking a significant milestone that confirmed her success. This achievement filled Linda with pride. In early 1989, Around the time of Linda's 45th birthday, her relationship with Bill came to an end. Paul, a consulting engineer hired at her company, frequently encountered her. He had a background in nuclear engineering and was a young professional with experience in power plant safety organization. However, he was seen as somewhat eccentric and quickly earned a reputation for being selfish and arrogant. His behavior was often deemed unacceptable, and he used his intelligence as an excuse for it. While Paul was indeed intellectually gifted and outperformed many of his colleagues based on his achievements, he also claimed to have won $26 in the lottery on his first try, which he attributed to careful calculation. Additionally, he belonged to an international community of high IQ individuals and often showcased his certificates. However, aside from that, he lacked any notable accomplishments. Paul was intelligent and charming, which impressed his boss, Linda, who quickly fell in love with him after 3 years of dating. They decided to marry. Fulfilling a long-held dream of Linda's, Linda often described their relationship as very loving, which seemed to justify her choice, even though she later confided to friends that there was no intimacy between them, as Paul showed little interest. Shortly after their marriage, Paul suggested they merge their finances. Linda contributed most of the income to their household, although they had plenty of money initially. Linda soon realized that her salary was not enough to cover their expenses. Despite her careful budgeting in the past, she found it increasingly difficult to save, and her funds were nearly depleted each month before her next paycheck. When she investigated the issue, she discovered that Paul had been using their joint finances to support 2 ex-wives and 3 children, whom Linda had not known about before their marriage. He dismissed this as a minor deception, and unfortunately, Linda believed him. This revelation surprised her friends, as she had always been financially responsible. As their marriage continued, Paul displayed increasingly suspicious behavior, leading to repeated concerning incidents, along with the story of the insurance contract. This raised red flags, since he entered the marriage without any assets. While Linda owned a large mansion, multiple cars, and had invested in designer renovations, she still dressed elegantly and had a taste for expensive items, none of which Paul possessed. Paul must have known that his wife already had several life insurance policies in place, but he was not listed as a beneficiary on any of them. Her sister, ex-boyfriend, and other close relatives were. Instead, there seems to be no good reason for a new insurance policy. Many suspect that his motives were driven by a desire to gain financially in the event of her death, and many began to seriously fear that he would not just wait for such events, but might somehow expedite the process. Just 6 months into their marriage, Linda began to doubt her husband's true intentions. Around this time, her friend Frankie Thurber went through a divorce and found herself in a tough situation. In 1993, Linda offered Frankie a temporary place to stay in her mansion. Influenced by Frankie's experiences, Linda started to question whether her husband genuinely loved her, thinking he was trying to exploit their relationship. As a result, she asked Frankie not only to stay with her, but also to keep an eye on Paul and report any suspicious behavior. Even Frankie noticed that Paul had strong feelings for Linda, which showed in his actions. Although Paul wasn't wealthy and couldn't shower her with gifts, he expressed his love by taking care of her. He would cook delicious meals and pamper her with treats when she came home from work, followed by running a hot, foamy bath for her. This daily ritual became Linda's favorite. Observing this, and after listening to Frankie, even Mary eventually agreed that Paul seemed to be a loving husband, dedicated to making his wife happy. In June 1993, just before their first wedding anniversary, Linda's health began to decline. She experienced a mysterious illness, feeling persistently unwell without any typical symptoms of common ailments, like a cold. Instead, she suffered from ongoing stomach issues. Her condition worsened rapidly, and within a few days, she was hospitalized. By then, Linda was unable to get out of bed, shocking everyone around her, including her doctors. as she was once a healthy and vibrant 45-year-old woman, despite extensive examinations. The cause of her illness remained undetermined. In early July 1993, Linda was admitted to a hospital in Samaritan due to gastrointestinal problems. She was given a private room and assigned a qualified nurse for her care. Paul, her husband, stayed by her side and did everything he could to support her. 2 days after the admission, the nurse connected Linda to an IV for hydration and briefly left to attend to another patient. When the nurse returned, she noticed something alarming. The saline bag appeared unusually dark. The fluid looked cloudy and slightly yellowish, suggesting that something might have been added to it. The nurse quickly disconnected Linda from the IV, took the bag for lab analysis, and reported her findings to the hospital management. On that day, Linda received a visit from her ex-boyfriend, Bill, who was shocked by her frail appearance. Linda looked emaciated, as if she was struggling to survive. Within a week, she decided to go home, despite having difficulty walking, and was discharged from the hospital. However, her happiness was short-lived. Just 21 days later, she was readmitted due to a stroke. Linda nearly died, but was saved at the hospital. Subsequently, an analysis of her IV bag revealed a dangerously high dose of the painkiller lidocaine, which should not have been present for intravenous use. The medical center's management contacted the police, prompting an investigation that focused on one suspect, Paul, who was accused of attempting to poison his wife. Despite these alarming developments, Linda maintained that she loved Paul and had no plans to leave him. Did she realize that he might be the poisoner? It's possible that she simply pushed such thoughts away and didn't want to believe them. Meanwhile, her friends and family rallied against Paul, urging Linda to end the relationship for her safety. Nevertheless, she chose to stay with him. Linda eventually recovered from her mysterious illness, but the investigation into the poisoning stalled without any conclusions. Just 5 months later, in December 1993, Linda fell ill again with the same mysterious illness that doctors could not diagnose. Paul took her to a different hospital in Mission Viejo, where no one knew him, although he expressed distrust in the local specialists. The doctors there largely repeated the same diagnoses and conclusions as before. It appeared that Linda was being poisoned slowly. The medical staff also began to suspect her husband, who was always nearby. A nurse was assigned to monitor and care for Linda. She secretly communicated with Linda and warned her that her husband might have ulterior motives. A few days later, a similar incident occurred to one that had happened 5 months earlier. The nurse had briefly stepped out, leaving Paul alone with Linda. When the nurse returned, Paul was missing, and the IV drip bag looked different. It was later analyzed and found to be contaminated with unknown substances. The medical staff was already suspicious of Paul, believing he might be involved in an attempt to harm Linda to ensure her safety. They even placed a warning sign at the entrance of her room with the content prohibiting Paul Curry from entering without an escort. The police were called back to Linda's room, where she explained that Paul had significant credit card debts, yet she insisted he was a wonderful, devoted, and loving husband. She maintained that he was very kind and could never harm her. It was possible that both medical institutions had misjudged the situation. When investigators interviewed Paul, he insisted that he had no idea what was happening to his wife and was simply waiting for her recovery. However, case records revealed a troubling discovery during searches of their mansion. In Paul's room, on his dresser, were all the life insurance policies taken out on his wife. This raised suspicions after Linda was discharged from the hospital. She spoke with Frankie, who confirmed that she had not placed the documents there, which meant Paul had done it. There was no one else involved. It was evident that Paul aimed to profit from her death. Despite this, Linda did not believe he was capable of such a terrible act. Nearly 6 months later, on June 9, 1994, Mary received an email from Paul informing her that Linda was feeling worse than ever and that an ambulance had been called. He believed Linda was dying and urged Mary to come and support her later. Around midnight, Paul called 911, claiming he had awakened to find his wife not breathing. In subsequent conversations with Linda's family and the police, he maintained that he sensed something was wrong, saw that Linda was barely breathing, and tried to perform artificial respiration, but she did not respond, prompting him to call for emergency help. By the time Linda arrived at the hospital, she had already died. Paul appeared to be a heartbroken widower, crying on the shoulders of Linda's family and friends, while they all quietly suspected him of murder. During the autopsy, the forensic expert found an unusual mark behind Linda's right ear, which they believed might be a sign of a syringe injection. A toxicology report later showed that Linda had a lethal amount of nicotine in her blood. This was particularly puzzling since Linda had never smoked. How could nicotine have entered her system? Consequently, her death was ruled a murder. But authorities found no evidence linking Paul to the crime. There were no syringes or needles at the scene, and the IV bags from previous cases did not have Paul's fingerprints. Meanwhile, Paul attempted to claim $1 million in life insurance from his deceased wife because he had previously successfully convinced Linda to purchase a new policy. Soon after Linda's death, it was discovered that she had handwritten a note, leaving half of her estate to her sister. This infuriated Paul, who sought legal advice to claim the entire inheritance, but he was unsuccessful. Everything had to be divided. In the end, Paul Curry collected $419 from Linda's 2 life insurance policies and her retirement plan. It also came to light that all of Paul's educational and professional credentials were forged. Even the supposed International Organization of Intellectuals was a scam. He hadn't even graduated from college. As a result, he was fired from his job. Now, these incidents were decided to be viewed in a new light. In 2002, the former state prosecutor retired, and a new one took over, showing immediate interest in Linda's case. At the time of Linda's death, he was still in law school, but he had since become the district attorney and was eager to make a name for himself. He was particularly intrigued by the media used to store evidence from the mid-90s, especially the extensive analysis of microcassette analysis. All conversations with suspects and witnesses had been recorded, including an interview with Linda conducted shortly before her death while she was in the hospital in August 19, 1993. During the investigation, authorities believed Linda was a victim of poisoning and sought to identify any potentially dangerous individuals in her life who might want to harm her. Mary quickly named one suspect, Paul Curry. He had the most significant motive. He stood to gain $1 million from insurance and ownership of his wife's property. The new prosecutor investigated the background of Paul and found that his entire life was based on deception. A poison expert specializing in substances like nicotine was consulted for the case. He determined that the nicotine level in the victim's blood was 4 to 5 times higher than a lethal dose, which could not have resulted from smoking alone. Given the forensic expert's initial findings, it was concluded that Paul had administered a fatal injection discreetly behind Linda's ear. Death occurred approximately 20 to 30 minutes later, leaving no chance to save Linda. In addition to nicotine, significant amounts of a sedative and sleeping pill were detected in her blood. It appeared that he first sedated his wife to administer the lethal injection without raising suspicion. Adding the sleeping pill was easy for him since he often cooked for Linda and experimented with different sauces and spices. A neighbor testified that Paul went to the store for cigarettes that evening. However, it was clear that Linda could not have absorbed such a high dose of nicotine even if she had smoked 5 packs. The nicotine must have been injected. After losing his job, Paul relocated to Kansas, where he remarried and had a son. He initially worked as a used car salesman and did well, but later grew bored and switched to being a building inspector. During this time, he had never broken the law and seemed to be a good family man and a respected member of the community. On November 9, 2010, Sergeant Schull questioned Paul Curry under the pretense of questioning him. as a potential witness in an unrelated case. In reality, they aimed to discuss Linda's death. Paul, believing they were out-of-state police officers unfamiliar with him and his late wife, began talking freely when asked about his past relationships, without requesting any identification. To the officer's surprise, he shared a story that contradicted his earlier statements. This led to the decision to arrest Paul Curry for revealing too much information. 16 years after his wife's death, Paul was finally held accountable. Unfortunately, justice did not hurry, and he did not appear in court until September 2014. During this time, he had spent all that time in jail. Paul faced charges of premeditated murder, which, according to state law, could result in life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The defense attorney employed a typical strategy of denial, arguing that the prosecution lacked direct evidence connecting Paul to Linda's murder. The defense claimed that Linda had given herself a nicotine enema, supposedly based on someone's suggestion of this unusual treatment for her stomach pain. Meanwhile, the prosecution stated that a sedative was found in her blood. Noting that there was no prescription for it and that it wasn't provided by the hospital, they alleged that Paul had given his wife the drug to sedate her before the murder. The prosecution also claimed that Paul was the only person in Linda's life with a serious motive and had been alone with her for at least 6 hours prior to her death, clearly having done something to her, as there was no one else who could have done it. After both sides presented their arguments, the jury went into deliberation, which lasted a day and a half. As a result, Paul Curry was found guilty of first-degree murder with the intent to profit, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Paul never admitted his guilt, so the exact circumstances surrounding Linda's death remain a mystery. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lisa Valdez. Lisa Valdez was born on September 6, 1961, in San Francisco, California. She has an older brother and a loving mother. Although her father was absent from their lives, but Lisa and her mother shared an exceptionally close bond, rarely arguing. Those who knew them admired the harmony in their relationship. During her teenage years, Lisa developed a passion for dancing. She also became interested in IT, which was a relatively new field at the time. Notably, she was an early user of email, using it before many of her friends knew of its existence. This interest significantly influenced her future career path. Following college, Lisa got a job as a software analyst in San Francisco. Her mother later used her savings to purchase a small studio apartment for Lisa in a prestigious neighborhood, which offered a stunning city view. Living alone, Lisa advanced in her career, prioritized family time, and continued dancing, attending weekly practice sessions with her best friend. On May 16, 1998, Lisa, who was 36 at the time, hosted an evening gathering with her mother and some family friends. After the guests departed, her mother helped with the dishes and then headed home. Before leaving, Lisa promised to call her mother the next day, but the call never came. Initially, Lisa's mother thought she was simply busy, especially since she had dance practice scheduled for that day. However, as the day progressed without any communication from Lisa, her mother began to worry. The following day, Lisa's mother tried calling her, but there was no answer. She continued attempting to reach Lisa, but her calls went unanswered. On Monday, the fourth day since they last spoke, Lisa's colleagues contacted her mother to express their concern that Lisa had not shown up for work and was not responding to their calls. This was highly unusual, as Lisa was known for her reliability and always notified her workplace if she needed to take a day off. Lisa's mother grew increasingly concerned, so she decided to visit an apartment complex to check on her. When she arrived, she witnessed a disturbing scene. The building was surrounded by police tape and there were a lot of police officers. She asked the police what was going on, and they told her that earlier that day, some residents had reported a strange smell coming from one of the apartments. The building manager checked and found an unlocked door, then went inside and found a body on the floor, and they to call the police. The police then were promptly called to the scene. Police officers quickly identified the victim as Lisa. Her body showed clear signs of trauma and decomposition, indicating she had been murdered several days prior. The presence of blood stains on the floor and bed, along with her partially undressed state and underwear found next to her body, suggested she had been being attacked and sexually abused. The room was in disarray, but further investigation revealed that this was typical of Lisa's living habits. The TV was on, and the air conditioner was set to 78 degrees. No signs of robbery were present, with valuables and jewelry left untouched. However, Lisa's keys and a gym bag were missing. A peculiar detail was the removal of some of Lisa's hair by the attacker, hinting at strong personal motives. The numerous injuries on her body further supported this theory. The detective suspected that the killer might have had a prior relationship with Lisa and cherish a deep-seated hatred for her, given the lack of forced entry and the secure nature of the fenced apartment complex. Additionally, the apartment complex was secured with a fence, and access required either a key or to be let in by a resident. The police began interviewing residents in the apartment building, searching for someone who might have seen the attacker. They quickly found a lead when one of Lisa's neighbors reported that 2 days earlier, upon returning from vacation, he noticed damage to the metal frame of his front door and a faint blood stain. Although he had informed the manager, but they decided not to report it to the police, as it appeared his apartment had not been broken into. Detectives believed the same person who killed Lisa was responsible for the damage to the neighbor's door. However, the motives behind these actions were unclear. One theory was that the killer tried to break into the neighbor's apartment, was caught by Lisa, and subsequently murdered her. Another theory suggested the attempted break-in might have occurred after Lisa's murder, which seemed unusual. Detectives speak with the housekeeper who cleaned Lisa's apartment weekly. 2 days before Lisa's body was found, the housekeeper attempted to enter the apartment, but found the door blocked from the inside. Through a crack in the door, she saw a partially undressed woman on the floor and heard a man's voice. Believing she was interrupting a private moment, she left immediately. Police suspected that Lisa was already dead at this time and the man's voice belonged to her killer, who was still inside the apartment. The housekeeper mentioned a suspicious detail, a black bag with a zipper near the body. However, she was uncertain since she only caught a glimpse. On the inside of Lisa's apartment door, an envelope with cash was taped, untouched. This money was intended for the housekeeper, a frequent habit of Lisa. The fact that the envelope was still there suggests that Lisa was likely attacked after her mother departed, sometime between midnight and the early hours of the morning, which would have been when Lisa normally left the payment. Neighbors from the floor below corroborated these things. They reported hearing thuds and someone descending the stairs, although they didn't see the individual. As detectives searched Lisa's apartment, they discovered an unusual detail: the toilet seat was up, uncommon for a woman living alone. Forensic experts found a partial fingerprint that didn't match Lisa's. The police collected fingerprints from Lisa's acquaintances and relatives who may have visited her apartment, but none matched. This led detectives to believe that the fingerprint might belong to the killer. The medical experts completed their report, revealing new information about Lisa's case. Her body had over 20 stab wounds, but due to decomposition, it was unclear if she had been sexually assaulted. However, defensive wounds on her body suggested that Lisa had attempted to fight off her attacker. Furthermore, skin particles were found under her nails, which were likely from the killer, and were sent to the lab for analysis. In the meantime, forensic experts analyzed evidence from the apartment and discovered a crucial clue: a pillowcase with multiple blood stains. Upon closer examination, it was determined that not all of the blood on the pillowcase belonged to Lisa, as some of the stains were from a different source. As a result, the pillowcase was sent to the lab for further testing. Investigators suggested that the killer may have unintentionally hurt himself while stabbing Lisa, which can happen when using a knife. Supporting this hypothesis was the discovery of 2 bandages from a first aid kit inside the toilet. The killer might have used these to stop his bleeding and potentially left fingerprints on the toilet seat when disposing of the bandages. DNA analysis revealed that the blood on the pillowcase came from an unknown male not listed in the FBI database. This man's DNA also matched skin particles under Lisa's nails and a blood stain on her pillowcase. Despite no matches in the DNA database, detectives obtained the killer's DNA profile. They then compared it to DNA samples from suspects in their system who had committed crimes in Lisa's area and closely examined her acquaintances. Lisa's mother shared information about Lisa's relationship with a man named Albert Ketto, stating they had plans for a date the day following the murder. However, these plans were canceled by Albert a few days beforehand. When detectives questioned Ketto, they noticed a large cut on his hand, which made them suspect him as the killer. And he might have injured themselves while stabbing Lisa. Despite this, Albert denied any involvement in the murder. The detectives took his fingerprints and DNA samples for comparison, but surprisingly, they did not match the blood on the pillowcase or the skin particles found under Lisa's nails. Investigators continued their search for other suspects by reviewing the messages on Lisa's answering machine from the days leading up to the murder. After making a list of 40 people texting Lisa, they found one message particularly suspicious. Just hours before the murder, while Lisa still had guests at her home, a man called her, but she didn't pick up, he leaving a strange message. "You know how it goes, Tita. Hey Lisa, are you home?" When police played this message for one of Lisa's friends, the friend immediately identified the voice as Albert Robinson, a work colleague of Lisa's. Albert had made his feelings for Lisa known, but she had rejected his advances. Despite this, they remained friendly at work and, with Lisa considering him a friend. During the memorial service for Lisa, something else happened. Albert attended the service and delivered a speech that left everyone perplexed. He asserted that he and Lisa were intensely in love and had plans to get married and start a family. However, Lisa's friends and mother disputed Albert's things, stating that they were entirely false. According to them, Lisa had mentioned that Albert had expressed interest in her, but she did not reciprocate his feelings. Lisa's mother also emphasized that Lisa would have confided in her about such significant plans. Albert was questioned by the police and he denied being involved in Lisa's murder. He claimed to love her and said he would never hurt her. However, he refused to give the police his DNA sample and fingerprints, which raised suspicions. As a result, detectives continued to investigate him and look for new evidence. It is possible that Lisa's failure to reciprocate Albert's feelings made him hate her and kill her in revenge. The violent nature of the murder suggested that it was personal, and the fact that the killer cut off some of Lisa's hair and took it with him could be related to Albert's fixation on her. Detectives got a search warrant for Albert's house and found it filled with dozens of Lisa's photos, further evidence of his obsession. Despite this, he continued to deny any involvement in the murder. He voluntarily provided his fingerprints and DNA, which were sent to the lab for analysis. However, the lab results showed no match with the DNA and fingerprints found at the crime scene. As a result, he was cleared as a suspect, and the investigation continued. Years went by with no new leads, and the case remained unsolved. Investigators regularly checked DNA and fingerprint databases, hoping the killer would be caught for another crime, but there were no matches. Police were initially baffled that the perpetrator of such a heinous crime did not appear in any databases, so they doubted it was his first serious offense. Despite ongoing searches over the years, the police couldn't find any matches. Lisa's mother made multiple television appearances, pleading for anyone with information to come forward, yet detectives remained without new leads. In 2010, detectives discovered the FBI had begun utilizing a new DNA technology to identify suspects by comparing their DNA samples with those in the database to find relatives. This method, unlike genetic genealogy which emerged later, was only effective for locating close relatives, such as a father or brother. With no other leads, police requested a comparison in 2011 and waited. On September 2nd, lead detective Ive received a call from the FBI. They said that when the experts retested the DNA sample, they got a perfect match. The DNA from blood and skin particles under her nails matched a 52-year-old man named Anthony Hughes, who had recently been added to the FBI database. Anthony had a lengthy criminal record that went back decades, but previously, his crimes didn't qualify for his DNA to be included in the FBI database. However, due to updates in legislation, it became mandatory for individuals convicted of crimes in California to provide DNA samples, irrespective of how minor the offense was. Anthony's DNA sample was added to the database following his arrest for a minor shoplifting offense. In addition to his DNA, his fingerprints were also entered into the database, and they were found to match a fingerprint discovered on Lisa's toilet seat. Specialists were even able to pinpoint which specific finger left the print with relative ease. Before arresting Anthony, detectives searched for more evidence linking him to the crime. They stumbled upon a new clue. 13 years prior, police had reviewed messages left on Lisa's answering machine, but only those received before her murder. Now, after all these years, detectives found that Anthony had left a message for Lisa just a day after her death. The message itself was unremarkable and didn't raise suspicions. However, if the police had investigated Anthony at that time, they won't just find out his dense criminal history but also another important piece of information. Upon reviewing Lisa's belongings, detectives discovered Anthony's phone number in her address book, which confirmed that Lisa and Anthony knew each other. Further investigation, including conversations with Lisa's friends, revealed that Lisa and Anthony had dated briefly in high school. With this new information, detectives felt they had sufficient grounds to question Anthony. However, since he didn't have a fixed address at the time, they decided to approach him cautiously to prevent him from fleeing. When they arrested him, they initially told him that he was being investigated in connection with a series of robberies in San Francisco. Anthony surrendered without resistance. During the interrogation, detectives initially asked Anthony about the robberies. They then inquired about his relationship with Lisa. Initially, Anthony denied knowing Lisa, but when shown her photo, he acknowledged that they had known each other in high school. He also claimed that he hadn't seen her since the late 1980s. Detectives spent several hours questioning Anthony about his relationship with Lisa and whether he had seen her recently. When investigators confronted Anthony about the DNA evidence found in Lisa's apartment from 1998, his response was unexpected. He burst into tears and requested a pen and paper, seemingly prepared to confess. However, instead of writing a confession, he began hitting himself with the pen. Authorities had to restrain him as he continued crying and shouting, claiming he was being framed for a crime he didn't commit. Following this, Anthony was charged with Lisa's murder, and her family was informed that her killer had finally been caught. The trial was delayed by 4 years. Then, when it began, Anthony appeared confident, even smirking. However, later he began displaying religious symbols, such as carrying a Bible and wearing a cross. Detectives believed this was a tactic to sway the jury. Anthony's lawyer argued that he was physically incapable of committing the crime. A medical condition, diagnosed 5 years prior, had weakened his muscles, making it extremely difficult to perform repetitive movements. The lawyer argued that given this condition, Anthony could not have inflicted the more than 20 stab wounds found on Lisa. According to the medical report that year, Anthony's health condition was recovered well at the time of the murder. The prosecution had strong evidence that placed Anthony at the scene case, including his skin under Lisa's fingernails, his blood on a pillowcase, and his fingerprint on the toilet seat. However, regardless of the evidence against him, Anthony consistently denied having seen Lisa since the late 80s. The prosecution presented a theory that Anthony had gone to Lisa's home, attempted to initiate intimate contact with she, and when she rejected, he brutally murdered her. After the crime, he cut off a piece of her hair and took it with him as he fled. Anthony Hughes was ultimately given a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 16 years. In 2031, when he will be 72 years old, Anthony is currently serving his sentence in prison. However, he still maintains his innocence and says he was wrongfully convicted. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Inman family. William Inman and Sandra's story began in 1983 when they met at church. He was 18 and she was 16. With their parents' approval, they quickly got married and moved to Logan, Ohio. William was a devoted religious man who worked as a builder. In his free time, he volunteered at the Evangelical Church of the Tabernacle of Faith near Nelson Villa, where he played musical instruments. Meanwhile, Sandra, as a housewife, supported her husband's spiritual activities. In 1984, the couple had their first child, a son named William Jr. To prevent any confusion, the church community referred to the father as Bill and the son as Will. Over the years, Will grew up. In 2001, at the age of 17, he met 15-year-old Summer Cook at a church service. Their meeting was strikingly similar to the love story of Bill and Sandra. The young couple dated for 3 years, and in 2004, after Summer turned 18, they got married. They quickly settled into Will's parents' large house in Logan. In the same year, 39-year-old Bill Inman declared himself a spiritual leader and turned his garage into a temporary church, where he started holding services. Although local residents were initially skeptical of him as a self-proclaimed pastor, his church began to gather followers. It started with neighbors and gradually expanded to their acquaintances. People were drawn there to pray, seek comfort, and make donations. In 2005, Will and Summer joyfully welcomed a son named Alex. However, they soon encountered financial challenges. Will's work at the church did not provide enough income, so the family chose to seek better opportunities in another state. In 2006, the Inman family relocated to Florida. They soon found jobs in the construction industry, building hotels in their new location. Meanwhile, Sandra and Summer looked after their home and raised little Alex. After 2 years, however, they missed their hometown and decided to return to Ohio. Unfortunately, they had lost the right to repurchase their previous house in Logan while they were away, so they had to rent a different place in rural Vinton. In 2008, shortly after returning, Will and Summer welcomed their second child, a daughter named Kale. 2 years later, they had their third child, another daughter named Alana. Despite the difficulties of raising young children, Will and Summer made an effort to carve out time for themselves. Almost every weekend, they entrusted their kids to Bill and Sandra, who happily embraced their roles as grandparents. For this elderly couple, their grandchildren brought immense joy and purpose to their lives. In the spring of 2010, Bill Inman was officially appointed as a pastor of the Church of the Tabernacle of Faith. Alongside his wife, he established a charitable organization named Ranch of Mercy, which was created to assist those in need, particularly people who had lost their jobs or homes. Bill had a vision of constructing a large shelter for orphans and widows, intending to build it himself. Unfortunately, he faced challenges due to insufficient funding to make this dream a reality. Bill proposed holding a lottery to raise funds. He planned to sell tickets for $10 each to reach his financial goal. The winner will receive either a new house or $200,000. Bill also promised to give away 99 other valuable prizes in a raffle. Information about the lottery was shared through local media and advertising. Bill went door to door, encouraging people to support the cause by buying tickets, assuring them that the money raised would be used to build a shelter for those in need. In total, Inman sold 100,000 tickets and raised $1 million. The prize draw is set for September 2010. While Bill was busy with charity work, issues were developing in the Inman family. In June 2010, Summer informed her husband that she wanted a divorce after 6 years of marriage. Before this conversation, she had written a painful entry in her diary, expressing that she was very tired of trying to please everyone and felt exhausted. She questioned whether she deserved happiness and if she had the right to fall in love again and feel loved in return. She acknowledged that it might not be the best time, but she felt the need to tell Will the truth, believing he deserved to know that she did not want to be with him anymore. She mentioned that she needed time alone to figure out who she really was, as she felt like she was just following orders at that moment. Summer emphasized her love for her children, stating that she wouldn't trade them for the world, but she did not want them to see their mother merely obeying someone else. She expressed uncertainty about how Will would react, fearing that he might get angry, try to take the kids, or even threaten her. She believed they should share equal time with the children, but she knew his parents would oppose this and try to persuade her to stay, although she realized that wouldn't change anything. She also recounted that yesterday, Will had asked her what she wanted, but she couldn't answer because all she knew was what she didn't want, to be unhappy and feel trapped. Yet, she remained silent every day, saying that all she could do was cry and sleep. She admitted that she just didn't know how to escape the situation and make everything right, hoping that when she wrote again, she would have found the answer. Summer filed for divorce and moved out of the Inman's house with the children and essential belongings to her parents' home. She wanted to ensure that Alex, Cale, and Alana could still communicate with their father, so she allowed them to visit Will and his parents. 2 months after leaving her husband, Summer began a relationship with Adam Peters. At the same time, she took a job as a cleaner at a bank in downtown Logan, as she had no formal education and struggled to find other employment. Meanwhile, September and October passed, but the drawing that Bill from Ranch of Mercy had promised never took place. It also became clear that construction on the prize house hadn't even started, and the Bill family was slow to refund people's money for the tickets. In early December 2010, the Inmans received notice that they needed to leave their rented home due to unpaid debts. After this news, Summer, accompanied by Adam, went to collect their belongings. However, Will and his parents refused to let her in. Summer called the police, claiming that Will was threatening her and wouldn't return her personal items. When officers arrived, Will continued to deny entry. He threatened to shoot Adam, and even got into a confrontation with a police officer. In her statement, Summer explained that before their wedding, she and Will appeared to have a perfect relationship, but everything changed after they married. Will became controlling and jealous, making unfounded accusations. He dictated her actions and invaded her privacy, affecting her eating habits, household responsibilities, and even their sexual relationship. Summer was so restricted that she couldn't sleep without his permission. He essentially kept her confined to the house and took away her phone and keys. She revealed that Will had always wanted to have 12 children with her and had even considered marrying a second wife. He frequently visited websites for polygamous families, where he shared explicit photos. Will also threatened to kill Summer if she tried to leave him. At one point, he took her cherished cats, drove them far away, and then lied, saying they had escaped through an open window, laughing and claiming she would never see them again. After Summer accused him of wrongdoing, Will attempted to defend his actions by saying he took her phone and keys because he thought she was being unfaithful. Regarding the cats, he claimed he took them to a shelter because they were scratching the furniture and being aggressive to family members. Eventually, Will was ordered to stay away from Summer, and he received a fine and probation for his actions. A custody battle began between the two families. The Inmans reported to the police that Adam Peters posed a danger to Alex, Kaylee, and Alana. A frightening incident occurred late on the night of March 22, 2011. 25-year-old Summer was finishing her shift at the bank. As usual, she cleaned up her workspace and went outside around 11 p.m. to take out the trash. Before leaving, Summer had sent a message to Adam, whom she was supposed to meet after work, but he never saw her again. Concerned, Adam went to the bank after midnight. He couldn't find Summer, but near the trash can he discovered her belongings, her phone, keys, and a running music player with headphones on. A little further away, he found her jacket in the bushes. Adam called the police and notified Summer's parents about her disappearance. Initially, the family thought that she might have been late from work or misplaced her belongings. However, the bank security service informed them that she hadn't been seen since her shift ended. When the police arrived, several witnesses were already present. Two women jogging nearby reported that they had seen Summer being kidnapped about an hour earlier. They explained that as Summer approached a dumpster, a Ford Crown Victoria, driven by a blonde woman, pulled up. Two men wearing black balaclavas exited the vehicle, grabbed Summer, and forced her into the back seat. Despite her attempts to resist, scream, and plead for help, one of the witnesses who tried to intervene was met with pepper spray from the female driver. The kidnappers then drove away with Summer. The two women rushed to the nearest police station to report the incident, but for some reason, law enforcement was skeptical and even suspicious of their account, suspecting they might have fabricated the story for amusement. A whole hour had passed after Summer's parents called the police before they finally arrived at the crime scene. Unfortunately, by that time, it was too late for them to find Summer while the trail was still fresh. News of the abduction of 25-year-old Summer Inman quickly spread through local media. Hundreds of residents of Logan joined the search effort, but as days went by, hope of finding her alive began to fade. Summer's parents struggled to keep their thoughts away from the worst possible outcome. A few weeks prior to the tragedy, Summer had posted a picture on Facebook with Adam and the children, depicting what appeared to be a happy family. This photo infuriated Will Inman, Summer's husband. It had been revealed that Summer met Adam before deciding to divorce Will. In the spring of 2010, Adam started working for the Inmans, maintaining their house and yard, and he soon developed feelings for Summer. Initially, she rejected his advances, but eventually, she gave in. In her diary, she reflected on that moment, expressing that when their eyes met, she realized she had let the devil take hold of her and ignored the warnings from God. She mentioned that she tried to walk away, with her mind screaming to run, but she stayed and allowed Adam to embrace her, expressing her regret and guilt. Meeting Adam marked the beginning of the end for Summer and Will's marriage, as she realized that she wanted to pursue happiness, love, and to be loved, which ultimately led her to file for divorce. 5 days before Summer disappeared, Will attempted to challenge the alimony payments in court. He wanted to reduce the amount he had to pay his ex-wife from $150 per child each month to $50, as his annual income was only $6,500. Will, along with his parents, sought sole custody of the children, but the judge denied their request. Bill and Sandra deeply missed their grandchildren, who were the center of their lives. Since separating from Summer, the elderly couple had visibly lost weight and appeared weary. In March 2011, shortly after Summer went missing, the police found the Inman family, Bill, Sandra, and Will, were hiding in Bill's mother's house in Jackson County, Ohio. During questioning, all three of them consistently denied any involvement in Summer's disappearance. They explained that on the night she vanished, they had traveled to Cleveland to look at a new house. However, their car broke down, and they spent the entire night trying to fix it on the side of the road. They returned home to Logan the following morning. The Inmans stated that they had always treated Summer well and rarely had conflicts with her. However, they noted that after Adam Peters came into their lives, things took a turn for the worse. Bill, Sandra, and Will described Adam as a negative influence who had ruined their previously happy family. The police took an interest in a white Ford Crown Victoria that was parked near the Inman's house. They seized the car's GPS navigator and examined its route. They discovered that on the afternoon of March 22nd, when the kidnapping took place, the car was in Logan. The GPS was turned off at 5:30 p.m. that evening and only activated again the following morning, March 23rd, still in Logan. There was no evidence that the Inman family ever came to Cleveland. Additionally, phone records indicated that the suspects remained in Logan throughout the night from March 22nd to March 23rd. On the morning of March 23rd at 7:30 a.m., Bill, Sandra, and Will were seen at a car wash, where they had the car thoroughly cleaned inside. Summer was not with them. Afterward, the Inmans traveled to Cleveland, where they changed the tires at an auto repair shop. The mechanic found it unusual that Bill chose to replace nearly new tires with older ones. Additionally, the Inmans attempted to alter the car's appearance, and Bill removed a spotlight that he had previously installed near the side mirror. After the arrest, Bill attempted to reassure his elderly mother that they were innocent and that the trials they faced were a form of divine punishment. However, after several hours of intense questioning and realizing that all three could face the death penalty, Sandra eventually broke down. She confessed that they were responsible for the kidnapping of Summer on that tragic night. The men wearing balaclavas were identified as her husband, Bill, and her son, Will. Sandra explained that the abduction was entirely her idea. She intended to scare her daughter-in-law into allowing Will to see their children, but things quickly spiraled out of control. She stated that Will would admit to guilt for both murder and kidnapping. Sandra acknowledged that it was her idea to take Summer, explaining that she believed this would frighten her. Will tied Summer's hands, feet, and neck with plastic ties. Summer struggled and screamed, but then suddenly lost consciousness. Upon noticing that she was unresponsive, Will panicked and wanted to cut her free. He called out to his mother, asking where the knife was because he couldn't find it. As the family desperately searched for the knife, precious minutes passed. It was too late, and Summer had suffocated. Sandra insisted that they never intended to harm their daughter-in-law. Their goal was simply to scare her in order to resolve a custody dispute over the grandchildren so they could see them on weekends. On March 29, 2011, 1 week after the abduction, Sandra revealed the location where they had hidden the body. Summer was placed in an abandoned well on the property of the church that the Inman family attended, known as the Church of the Tabernacle of Faith, which is situated near Nelsonville, 30 kilometers from the bank where Summer worked. Bill Inman had previously helped build this church, and 28 years ago, he and Sandra got married there under its arches. When the police removed the concrete lid from the well, they discovered a disturbing scene. Summer was at the bottom, her body positioned head first. She was dressed in the same outfit she had worn on her last day, a black t-shirt that read, "I don't have an anger problem, I have an idiot problem." The autopsy revealed that Summer had died from strangulation. Besides the marks left by plastic ties on her neck, wrists, and ankles, there were no other injuries on her body. Sandra originally intended to dispose of the body in the river. However, she later thought the church well would be a safer place where it wouldn't be discovered. She confessed to her crime and showed genuine remorse for her actions. The trial soon followed. Bill, 49, and Will, 28, both pleaded not guilty to Summer's murder. Throughout the hearings, they spoke very little and avoided making eye contact with her parents. In contrast, Sandra took full responsibility for the crime, reiterating that the abduction was her idea. As she delivered her final statement, the woman tearfully pleaded for forgiveness from Summer's parents. Overwhelmed with emotion, Sandra clearly expressed her deep regret for the tragic events. "Summer was like a daughter to me," she cried. "If I could turn back time, I would never have made this terrible choice." In 2012, the court sentenced Bill and Will Inman to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sandra received a life sentence but is eligible for parole after 15 years. The church friends and parishioners all agreed that Bill was the one controlling everything in the Inman family. He made all the decisions. No one thought that the idea of the kidnapping came from Sandra. It was well known that Will had been spoiled as a child, with his parents giving in to his every demand. Sandra realized that both her husband and son were as guilty as she was, but she continued to plead guilty, hoping that it would lessen the consequences for them. Alex, Cale, and Alana were cared for by the parents of Summer, who had passed away, for an extended period. They struggled to explain to their grandchildren the absence of their mother, father, grandmother, and grandfather. The tragic story of the Inman family highlights how concealed anger, jealousy, and a need to control others can result in devastating outcomes. Bill and Sandra, who appeared to embody piety and strong family values to everyone, revealed themselves to be oppressive figures to their daughter-in-law. Summer found herself trapped in a toxic relationship that stifled her will and desires. Her efforts to escape ultimately cost her life. Will, who was raised in this oppressive environment, became selfish and resistant to compromise. His obsession with reclaiming his wife and children at any price ultimately led to his downfall. The terrible crime committed by the Inman's family shattered multiple families, leaving 3 young children without their mother and a grandfather and grandmother without their beloved family member. This story highlights the importance of letting go of grudges, respecting others' boundaries, and building relationships based on trust and respect. Holding on to anger can eventually lead to outbursts that damage the most valuable aspects of our lives. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Sophia McKenna. Sophia McKenna was born on March 7, 1996, in North Stonington, Connecticut. At the time of the incident, she was 21 years old and living in Groton, Connecticut. She was the daughter of Michelle from her first marriage and grew up with her brother, Justin, and her younger sister, Grace. Sophia was very caring towards her siblings, whom she loved dearly. As a child, she was happy and intelligent, showing unique qualities. She was active and full of energy, leading a vibrant and fulfilling life. However, her life was significantly affected by her parents' divorce when she was about 6 or 7 years old, which left her with a deep emotional scar. During high school, Sophia was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which contributed to her depression. This mental illness is marked by extreme mood swings, including episodes of mania or hypomania. Sophia faced emotional lows, characterized by sadness and melancholy, alternating with high-energy periods of euphoria. These mood swings affected her behavior and ability to think clearly. She received treatment, including medication and therapy, to help manage her symptoms, but there is no cure for bipolar disorder. This condition poses challenges for both Sophia and her family. It had a significant impact on her daily life, making her behavior unpredictable and her life chaotic, leading to unstable relationships. Those around her often exhibited complex behaviors as well. In 2015, Sophia met Austin, a bright and cheerful young man who quickly won her heart. He pursued Sophia with charm and determination, and they entered into a 3-year relationship. Unfortunately, this relationship was difficult for both Sophia and her mother, Michelle. Austin had some troubling behaviors. He was somewhat aggressive and used anabolic steroids for sports, which contributed to the instability of their relationship. The couple frequently argued and shouted at one another, sometimes escalating to physical confrontations. Sophia, who struggled with mental health issues, often initiated these conflicts. On multiple occasions, Austin's aggressive behavior resulted in injuries to Sophia, necessitating hospital visits. About a month before the incident, Sophia found out about Austin's cheating and decided to end their relationship. Despite this, they still met occasionally. While dealing with her emotions, Sophia focused on moving forward. She was a striking young woman and briefly worked as a model for a local jeans company, which helped her pay for her education. Eventually, she graduated as a massage therapist and got a job at an upscale spa called the Red Door, located in a luxury hotel. There, she met Spencer Mugford, a 20-year-old colleague. Spencer, originally from Florida, loved the sea and was an experienced swimmer working as a sailing instructor. He came from a caring family that had big hopes for his future. Spencer and Sophia quickly formed a close bond due to their shared interests and similar personalities. They reportedly dated for a while, but their families disapproved because the couple often found themselves in troublesome situations. Sophia's mother, Michelle, expressed deep concern for her daughter's well-being, particularly since Sophia continued to meet with her ex-boyfriend, Austin, and they frequently drank alcohol together, which had become a nearly daily habit. Ultimately, Sophia and Spencer decided to end their romantic relationship and remain friends. The exact reasons for this decision are unclear, but it seems that Sophia may have rekindled her relationship with Austin. Despite this, Sophia and Spencer continued to spend a lot of time together, both at work and outside of it, including on their last day together. On Saturday the 27th, Austin tried to reach her but didn't get any response. Initially, he wasn't too concerned because he knew Sophia often slept in. However, after several hours of trying to call and message her without success, he started to worry. He then reached out to Sophia's mother, Michelle, to check if Sophia had contacted her the night before. Michelle hadn't looked at her phone because her younger daughter had been using it all morning. When Michelle checked her phone, she saw that she had 7 missed calls from an unknown number. She decided to call back but only reached the voicemail of Spencer, boyfriend of her daughter's. This made her suspect that the calls might have been from Sophia. Michelle then tried to reach Sophia but got no answer. Feeling anxious, she and Austin started to search for Sophia. Austin called all the local hospitals, while Michelle reported Sophia as missing to the police. They contacted Spencer's family and found out that his relatives were also concerned because he hadn't arrived at an important family gathering and had not answered their calls. They went to Spencer's apartment but found no indication that he had been there. Spencer's father was worried because he knew his son had met with Sophia the night before, especially considering the problems she was dealing with. Spencer's mother mentioned that her son had said he planned to go fishing with a friend, but she suspected he was not truthful and actually intended to meet Sophia. She last spoke to him at 10 p.m. when he said goodnight. Concerned about his absence, Spencer's family reported both his and his girlfriend's disappearance to the police around 6:30 p.m. next day. The police started searching for them at that time. Austin reached out to the sheriff to share information about Sophia and Spencer's whereabouts the night before. He explained that he knew this because he had let Sophia go there. Austin also mentioned that he found a video Sophia posted on Snapchat the night before. In the video, which was recorded on Spencer's phone, they were on a boat heading towards the lighthouse. The footage showed a young man rowing towards the lighthouse, and it looked like they were having a good time. Later, Sophia uploaded a video to her Snapchat account. In the video, she was playfully posing with a concrete barrier and a lighthouse in the background, which had a "Do Not Cross" sign. What happened just minutes after this video remains a mystery. 5 minutes after posting the video at 2:05 a.m., Spencer's mobile phone made its first call to Michelle, Sophia's mother. This was followed by 3 more calls at 2:06, 2:08, and the last call at 2:09. Michelle, who was asleep at the time, did not answer any of these calls. No voicemails or text messages were left, and 911 did not receive any calls from that number that night. The photos and videos shared by them verified their presence at the lighthouse. Consequently, the police quickly sent 20 Coast Guard units to the location. Searches were carried out by the Coast Guard, firefighters, and police using air, sea, and land methods. The police made their first significant find: Sophia's car parked on a university campus, along with her cell phone inside it. Simultaneously, on that same night, the Coast Guard found a T-shirt that Spencer had worn in the video. The police theorized that Spencer may have used it to tie the boat to the shore. The search went on through the night and into the next day. Soon after, a storm hit and state authorities decided to suspend the search for them until new clues or signs of their possible location emerged. This decision left their families and friends devastated, but they didn't give up. They continued searching on their own, putting up pictures and sharing information about Spencer and Sophia's disappearance all over the city. They urged the public to report any information they might have. However, despite many people being in the area when the young people went missing, no witnesses came forward. The families' searches continued for several days, but all questions remained unanswered. What happened? Why did Sophia repeatedly call her mother? Why didn't she leave a voicemail or call the police? There were many speculations and assumptions. Could they have consumed something illicit? Indeed, Sophia and Spencer had broken the law by stealing a boat from the campus and heading to the lighthouse without permission. It's likely Sophia feared they could be held accountable and thus chose not to contact the police. A few days prior, she and Spencer had already had legal issues. Spencer had been detained for driving under the influence, and Sophia had faced charges for aggressive behavior. Perhaps for this reason, she preferred to contact her mother rather than the police. However, it's unknown what other circumstances were present in Sophia's life at that moment. She might have been in a state of panic and unable to think clearly. Everyone's reaction to such situations can be unpredictable. On May 26, 2018, detectives worked to piece together the day's events. It started as a typical sunny and warm day, with the weekend ahead promising fun as the city prepared for Memorial Day celebrations. Sophia had the day off, while Spencer was scheduled to work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Once he finished his shift, the couple planned to meet and join in the festivities. They looked forward to spending the rest of the day together, including a visit to the famous lighthouse known for its paranormal happenings, which they were excited to explore. What happened after Spencer's shift is unclear. We don't know where he went, if he met anyone, or whether he had been drinking. However, we do know that Sophia parked her car at the University of Connecticut campus around 2 a.m. She left her cell phone in the car, possibly because she forgot it or it was out of charge. They then took an illegal sailboat that had no motor, weighed 14 pounds, and was only equipped with oars. They pushed the boat into the water and headed towards the lighthouse, navigating along the rocky shores. This was a dangerous situation because the boat didn't have any safety equipment. They probably felt confident taking this risk due to Spencer's swimming and boating skills, which he had had since childhood. The investigators were only able to collect limited information about the events of that night. On Monday evening, while searching from a helicopter, the police spotted a white and blue sailboat stuck on the rocks, covered in dust. This boat was found 12 kilometers west of the lighthouse. Police reports suggest this could be the same boat that went missing from the campus and might have been used by Spencer and Sophia, but this remains unconfirmed. Fingerprints were discovered on the boat, but they were never analyzed, and the results were not made public to confirm whether they matched those of the young couple. Additionally, there was confusion about the type of boat involved. It was first described as a kayak, but later reports indicated it was a white sailboat with red markings. On June 8, 2018, fishermen on a commercial vessel near the Long Island Strait spotted something unusual in the water. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was a man's body. They promptly reported their find to the Coast Guard. When police arrived, they retrieved the body of a young man from the shore. They observed unexplained bruises and abrasions on the body, which was later identified as Spencer Mugford. He had been reported missing a few days earlier, along with his girlfriend, Sophia McKenna. To investigate the cause of Spencer's death, his body was sent for examination. The autopsy results confirmed that drowning was the cause of death, with no evidence of violence and all injuries linked to water. However, the specific details of the autopsy were not made public. During the same weekend that Spencer and his girlfriend went missing, 2 other men also disappeared in the area, and their bodies were later discovered, also having drowned. Initially, the police viewed these incidents as tragic accidents caused by unfortunate circumstances, and they did not explore any other theories at that time. Unfortunately, Spencer's girlfriend, Sophia McKenna, was never found. After several days of searching, fishermen discovered Spencer's body, leading his family to publish an obituary in the local media. In contrast, Sophia's family also wrote an obituary but remained hopeful for her return and continued to actively search for her. They frequently tried to recall the events leading up to her disappearance, trying to reconstruct what the young people did that evening and whether they interacted with anyone that night. Unfortunately, no new information surfaced. It remained unclear whether there were any calls made from Spencer's phone besides those to Michelle, as his mobile device was never found, and the police did not provide cell phone records. Moreover, the cameras at both the lighthouse and the campus were reportedly malfunctioning, resulting in no video footage from that night. It was also revealed that authorities had not checked the lighthouse, which should have been done immediately after the couple went missing. In July 2018, Sophia McKenna's family created a Facebook page named Searching for Sophia McKenna to keep awareness of her case alive. The page was used to share updates, brochures, and requests for information from the public. A few weeks after Sophia went missing, a concerning incident occurred. Michelle received a message from Sophia's social media account asking for money. Since Sophia's phone was with the police, this message raised suspicions of possible hacking. The investigations into Spencer's death and Sophia's disappearance reached a standstill, with police providing no definitive answers. Meanwhile, various unofficial theories about the case circulated. One theory suggested that Austin, Sophia's ex-boyfriend, may have been involved in their disappearance, with some speculating that he could have harmed Sophia and received help from his friends in disposing of Spencer's body. Sophia and Austin had a rocky relationship characterized by frequent fights and physical confrontations, which became a topic of public gossip. Michelle, Sophia's mother, saw many of their arguments firsthand. A month before Sophia went missing, serious problems emerged after she discovered Austin was cheating on May 8, 2018, which led her to break up with him. In what could have been a revenge move or a fresh start, Sophia started dating another guy and brought him to her apartment. This angered Austin, who stormed over and began banging and kicking the door while shouting insults at Sophia. After around 15 minutes of quiet, Sophia thought Austin had left and opened the door, but he was still there and tried to push his way inside. Luckily, Sophia quickly managed to shut the door again. Neighbors reported hearing him threaten to harm Sophia if she didn't open it. By the time the police and Michelle arrived, Austin had been arrested. The following day, May 9th, a court order came into effect. In her statement, Sophia detailed earlier attacks by Austin and included photos of her injuries. She expressed that she was afraid for her life because he was stalking her. A restraining order was issued, preventing Austin from being in the same area as Sophia. However, Sophia later felt guilty about the situation, and the restrictions were changed. Now, Austin was only barred from being in the same apartment as her. The man who was with Sophia at the time did not reveal his identity and initially did not cooperate with the police. Michelle initially claimed that it was Spencer with Sophia, but later changed her statement. However, a colleague whom Sophia trusted confirmed that it was indeed Spencer. Colleagues of Sophia and Spencer stated that they were in a relationship at the time of their disappearance and acted like a couple both at work and outside of it. Witnesses reported an incident at the hotel where Sophia's ex, Austin, confronted her at her workplace and threatened her publicly. Despite this, Austin and his father joined the search for the missing couple, using a private helicopter and distributing flyers with their images throughout the city. Austin claimed on social media that Sophia had been his girlfriend for 3 years and insisted she had only a platonic friendship with Spencer. Many found this post strange, as it seemed to focus more on his relationship with Sophia than on her disappearance. On July 10th, Sophia's family and friends held a memorial for her. Austin attended the event with Michelle and later shared a now-deleted message online saying, "Rest in peace, baby, we'll see each other soon." These actions raised concerns among people who knew them. Austin told the police that he spent the entire day with Sophia on May 26th and that they continued to meet despite a court order, even making plans for the following day. A friend of Austin mentioned that around 3 a.m. on the night of the incident, Austin texted Sophia saying he was at the gym with a friend. However, this claim seems questionable since gyms are closed at that hour. His family asserted he was home before leaving for the gym. An anonymous witness stated that Austin and his brother were invited to a party that day. Although Austin initially planned to attend, he later texted that he was tired and would not go. This situation raises concerns about Austin's location when Sophia and Spencer went missing, and there are no clear answers regarding his whereabouts. Austin's friends describe him as moody, which may be intensified by steroid use. There were rumors about Austin, his brother, and a friend having ties to the local police. Furthermore, a woman related to Austin was reportedly married to the police chief who was looking into Sophia's case and had faced complaints of police violence. However, the trustworthiness of these claims, made by a friend of Austin with a criminal history, is questionable. The day after these rumors circulated, a YouTube channel focused on disappearances in Long Island uploaded a video about Sophia. After that, Austin deleted all of their photos together from his social media, leading to confusion, especially since Sophia's fate was still unknown. One theory suggests that Austin had started dating someone new and wanted to avoid complications. However, it seemed odd that he removed all photos of Sophia. Additionally, shortly after Sophia went missing, Austin became noticeably less involved in the search efforts. When he met with investigators, he seemed calm and collected, showing no visible signs of distress over the loss of someone important. However, this alone is not enough to make any accusations against Austin, as people have different ways of responding to stress. One theory proposes that Sophia was murdered to stop her from testifying against Austin in a domestic violence case. If she hadn't spoken, there would not have been enough evidence to proceed, possibly leading to the case being dismissed. This scenario occurred in the summer of 2018 when the charges against Austin were dropped. It's crucial to mention that Austin is not formally considered a suspect. This theory is speculative, and the investigation is ongoing. Another theory suggests that Sophia and Spencer might have encountered dangerous people at the lighthouse. It was a busy holiday, but witnesses either failed to remember them or deemed the information unimportant, resulting in no reports made to the police. Sophia's mother suspected that her daughter could have been kidnapped or trafficked, but there is no evidence or ransom requests to back this up. The police also looked into the possibility of an accident caused by poor judgment. The young couple took an unprepared boat without life jackets into strong currents. After reaching the lighthouse, they secured the boat with Spencer's T-shirt and took some photos, only to discover that the boat had drifted away. Spencer, relying on his swimming skills, may have underestimated the cold temperature of the water. The darkness could have distorted his perception of distance, making the boat seem closer than it actually was. Exhausted from his workday and the swim to the lighthouse, Spencer might have drowned. Sophia realized she couldn't see or hear Spencer, so she attempted to call her mother for help. In her desperation, she might have jumped in to save Spencer and ended up drowning herself. Although Sophia was not a strong swimmer, alcohol could have influenced her to make a poor decision. Alternatively, she may have been walking along the narrow ledge of the lighthouse, trying to find Spencer, when she stumbled and fell while holding her phone. If that happened, she could have been swept away by the current and drowned. These possibilities are still considered, but other theories exist as well. None are formally recognized, and there are no suspects or culprits identified. Most of this information circulates on social media. Sophia's family and friends are still searching for her, determined to find out what happened and where she might be. In 2019, an independent detective discovered several bones near the shore and quickly reported them to the police. However, when investigators arrived, they concluded that the bones were from animals. The remains were never collected, and due to high costs, no forensic tests were performed to check if they were human. There are many troubling aspects of this case that deserve a deeper investigation. After all, it involves a missing person whose family is in distress, desperately seeking answers. Sophia deserves ongoing search efforts. While other bodies of missing individuals have been found in these waters, Sophia's has not. There have been no new developments in her case, and the mystery of what occurred that night at the lighthouse remains unresolved. Hello everyone. Today, we will learn about another case. The case of Chelsea Bruck. A party for 1,000 people seems like the perfect place to enjoy the festive atmosphere and have fun. However, horrors sometimes lurk just outside, bringing with them unsolved mysteries and hauntings. Chelsea Bruck was born in 1992 in Trenton, Michigan, USA. Her mother, Leanda, worked at a bank, while her father, Matthew, was a farmer. She is the youngest of 5 children. Chelsea has 3 older sisters, Jennifer, Megan, and Cassandra, and a brother named Nathaniel. She is especially close to Cassandra, who is only 2 years older than she is. But all of her siblings share a close and loving relationship. Chelsea's family exemplified a typical American household. They lived in a small town with a population of about 500 people, where everyone knew each other and crime rates were very low. Growing up on a 65-acre farm established in 1875 by her great-grandfather, Chelsea was raised in a supportive, religious environment with strong moral values. Her family also had been involved in agriculture for 4 generations. Chelsea attended a Christian school, where she spent her free time studying Catholic scriptures. Later, she transferred to Monroe Secondary School, which focused on sports, cheerleading, and football. After finishing her education, Chelsea continued to live on the farm with her parents and her sister, Cassandra. During this time, her older sisters got married and moved out. Chelsea had a passion for cooking and intended to attend culinary school to become a chef to gain experience. She took a job at a nearby restaurant called Olga's Kitchen, where she worked as an administrator and felt very happy in her role. Chelsea was a friendly, sociable, and attractive young woman. She loved to express her individuality, often dyeing her hair bright colors like pink and getting a small anchor tattoo behind her ear. When grown up, she maintained a close relationship with her parents. She didn't have a driver's license and wasn't particularly interested in getting one, as her parents always helped her with transportation. By the time she turned 22, she had worked for 4 years and developed a close circle of friends with whom she regularly connected. Chelsea loved going to parties, and one of her favorites was a rock concert organized by a local musician named Mike on his farm. Over the years, what started as a small gathering grew into a well-known event, attracting around 1,000 people, including attendees from neighboring states. Mike had his own band and also invited other local performers. This year, the concert was themed for Halloween and scheduled for October 25, 2014, in Newport, Michigan. which is about half an hour from Ferndale, Chelsea was excited about this big event and planned to attend with her friends Becky Brinson and Laura Taylor at the event. Chelsea and her friends planned to dress as Poison Ivy from the Batman universe. Chelsea created the costume herself, using a swimsuit as the base and adding various details after many nights of hard work. The final result was impressive. She crafted a costume that looked original and was worthy of first place. On Saturday, October 25, 2014, the friends gathered for the party. Laura drove them to the party, and they decided not to go home right after the event. Chelsea, now 22 years old. She intended to spend the night at Laura's place. She packed her things and set out for a fun evening. She plans to arrive at the concert around 10 p.m. However, it was still early, and the event had not yet started. Preparations were still in progress, but already hundreds of guests had gathered. Eager for a large-scale party, everything seemed well organized. There were several food and drink vendors, security guards, ensuring safety, and parking appeared secure. The girls, who had attended this event before, could not have imagined that this time it would turn into a nightmare. After parking the car, they walked toward the concert venue. Since Chelsea's costume had no pockets, she had to leave her mobile phone in the car to avoid losing it. Nearly 1,000 people attended the event, many dressed in elaborate costumes. Alcohol was abundant, and some attendees were under the influence of illegal substances. These things created a lively atmosphere. Most of the people were unknown to the girls, who had gathered from different cities, but there were several familiar faces. Penny and her sister Heather. The group had a strong bond, having known each other for many years, even though Penny was 10 years older than Chelsea and had her own children. They all felt the energy of the event and enjoyed it. When the rock concert finally began, everyone reveled in the loud music. Chelsea and her friends quickly immersed themselves in the lively atmosphere. They happily drank and danced with everyone. However, because they were too excited to play, Chelsea and her friends lost each other. The situation was further complicated because all the girls were tipsy and disoriented by the noise and chaos of the party, making it hard for them to keep track of everything. Laura tried to locate her friend but was unsuccessful. Becky and Laura weren't overly concerned because there were many acquaintances at the party. They assumed Chelsea was with someone from her circle and would get a ride home later. Around 1 a.m. on October 26, Laura decided to leave the party and go home, unable to find Chelsea in the crowd. Laura gave Chelsea's personal belongings to Becky and asked permission to leave first. Becky woke up early the next morning, aware that none of her friends had plans for that Sunday. They all assumed they would sleep off the effects of the night before. She tried to call Chelsea's mother to inform her that she had Chelsea's things but couldn't get through. She went about her day, and later in the evening, Chelsea's sister, Cassandra, messaged her to say that Chelsea still hadn't come home. Becky responded that she was spending the night at Laura's place. Everyone felt relieved, thinking Chelsea was safe. But when Chelsea still hadn't returned by Monday, it raised concern. Chelsea's relatives reached out to Laura, but they hadn't heard from Chelsea either. They began contacting all their friends who had attended and find that none of them had seen Chelsea since they lost track of each other that night. Chelsea hadn't communicated with anyone and don't post anything on social media, which heightened her family's concern. In a state of panic, they went to the Monroe County Police Station to report Chelsea missing. Initially, the police were reluctant to take the case because Chelsea was an adult, 22 years old, who had the right to make her own decisions, including leaving without informing her family. However, her relatives insisted that a search for Chelsea be initiated. Her mother feared that something terrible had happened to her. Immediately after that, detectives began looking into the circumstances surrounding Chelsea's disappearance and defined a search area between Newport and her family farm. As the search efforts continued, detectives sought the assistance of Mike, a rock performer and party organizer, and brought him in for questioning. He agreed to come to the police station to provide his account. Mike was not well acquainted with Chelsea and claimed he had no knowledge of her whereabouts. he did not arouse any suspicion, so he was allowed to go home. The detectives then spoke with the security guards who were present at the event. They stated that they hadn't noticed anything unusual. However, Chelsea's relatives suspected that Mike knew more than he was letting on, so they went directly to his house in search of information about their daughter. They intrusively entered his property, where the party had taken place, and began searching for clues themselves when tensions escalated quickly. Mike permitted law enforcement to enter his area, wanting to avoid any implication of wrongdoing despite the organized search. The authorities found nothing relevant to the investigation. There were no leads. The detectives continued to interview attendees of the Halloween party, but it proved challenging to gather information, as it was a costume event where everyone wore masks and consumed alcohol. These were young people eager to make a name for themselves as a result of their conversations with the party guests. The detectives received hundreds of conflicting statements. Many of these claims were difficult to verify and took a considerable amount of time to investigate. Most of the information turned out to be false, likely due to confusion among people, however. Some individuals seemed to purposely exaggerate their stories to gain attention. Some of the statements are completely absurd. One partygoer claimed that a girl could have been kidnapped for slavery, while another suggested that a satanic ritual was taking place. With the possibility of someone being burned alive, the case quickly gained widespread attention. Information, rumors, and falsehoods spread rapidly among local residents. The media was filled with alarming headlines, including wild speculations about victims of satanic rituals. This situation deeply affected the family of Chelsea and Mike, despite the outrageous nature of some claims. The police had to investigate all theories presented by the guests. They discovered that there had indeed been a fire near the stage, reaching heights of 15 to 20 meters. After examining the area, they confirmed that no human remains were found. Ruling out the possibility of ritual murder, the search lasted several days and involved many volunteers, but no evidence was discovered. The friends of Chelsea felt responsible for her disappearance since they had left her alone that night and hadn't begun searching for her earlier. They kept a close eye on her social media accounts, hoping to find clues about Chelsea's whereabouts since she was alone. Her boyfriend was not considered the main suspect, however. The police interviewed all the young men who had any connection to Chelsea in recent years, searched their cars, and collected DNA samples from those individuals. During this time, rock singer Mike allowed a command center for the search operation to be set up on his farm and supported the police in every way he could. He even provided a generator so the search team could have electricity. A tent camp was established for volunteers and those concerned about Chelsea's disappearance, including her family and friends. The search for Chelsea continued almost around the clock. But there was little progress, despite the warm welcome and extensive help Mike provided to the investigation. Detectives remained suspicious of him. This was mainly due to his reluctance to communicate, which led them to believe he was hiding something. However, it was understandable why he felt this way, given the intrusive nature of the police presence on his property. Ultimately, all of Mike's belongings were searched, but nothing incriminating was found. The police suspect him of involvement in the incident because, before, when the police arrived, Mike was tackled to the ground, and they even threatened to shoot his dog. The reason for this incident was that when the police arrived, they found Mike covered in blood. It was later revealed that he had gotten dirty while rescuing his dog, which had fallen into a trap and was badly injured. He had carried the animal out of the woods in his arms. Mike was primarily at fault for hosting a party without ensuring the safety of his guests. As a result, he faced criticism from Chelsea's family and the police. Detectives learned from Gavin Hewlett, who provided new details to the investigators. He mentioned that a girl in the poison ivy costume was also looking for her friends after she had gone missing. She approached other party guests, asking about Laura, but no one offered to help. Distressed, she started to cry, and Gavin offered her his cell phone around 1 a.m. Unfortunately, she was unable to reach anyone and only managed to borrow a small amount of money. Chelsea felt very sad about losing her friends and being left alone. She declined his offer for a ride. Witnesses from the party reported that Chelsea arrived at the parking lot but felt stranded. Her belongings, including her phone, were left in the car, leaving her unable to contact anyone or find her friends. Consequently, around 2:45 a.m., Chelsea walked onto the gravel road leading from the parking lot, hoping to find someone she knew for a ride home. Although several people offered her assistance, she chose to decline their help and continued walking alone. This was the last time anyone saw her alive. Many attendees recorded videos and took photos at the party. The police gathered all available materials from the partygoers and are now analyzing thousands of images and videos. Some witnesses mentioned a man selling t-shirts that night. They were searching for him not as a suspect, but as a potential witness who might have seen Chelsea. When officers located the t-shirt seller, he reported that he indeed saw a girl in a bright poison ivy costume. Making her hard to miss, he gave to provide the police with some helpful information that a man wearing a sweatshirt and hoodie approached Chelsea, and they engaged in conversation around 3 a.m. She left with him. Their interaction seemed friendly, and they did not hug or flirt. This man was captured on multiple security cameras in the area. Using these recordings and the account of the t-shirt vendor, a forensic artist created a sketch of the man who may have been the last person to see Chelsea alive. This sketch was released to the media, along with a reward for any information that could assist in solving the case. The reward fund gradually increased from $5,000 to $30,000. Leaflets were widely distributed, and Monroe County was filled with photographs of Chelsea by that time. Approximately 300 leaflets had been handed out. Every community had posters featuring her photo, and the leaflets were even included with pizza deliveries. The police station began receiving calls from local residents with tips. Many leads were reported. Data was analyzed, and around 1,000 interviews were conducted. But none of this resulted in significant progress. A breakthrough in the case occurred in 2015, just before the new year, when a woman named Cree Carr contacted the police department. She reported that her boyfriend had confessed to killing Chelsea. Cree had confronted her boyfriend, who threatened her with a knife, and during this confrontation, he revealed that it was the same knife he used to kill the girl in the poison ivy costume. She managed to escape from him as he intended to chase her and her child. When knowing about the high-profile case of Chelsea's disappearance, Cree wanted to assist in the investigation. The police were suspecting that the caller might be seeking revenge. As similar cases had occurred in the past, however, they could not completely disregard her call, so they decided to investigate during their inquiries. They discovered that the report was false. Cree up being one of 2 people arrested by the police, evidence showed that she was indeed a former acquaintance of Chelsea. The second individual detained was Harlan, a 19-year-old who claimed he intervened in a situation where 2 men were harassing Chelsea. He said attempting to rescue her before she was pulled into the fields. Later, Harlan confessed that his story was fabricated, and then the police received another call on March 22, 2015. A woman was cleaning her yard after winter when she found a red leather shoe. Without thinking, she discarded it in a garbage bag. Later that evening, her husband noticed the shoe and inquired about it. She explained how she found it while cleaning. He suggested that the shoe might be linked to Chelsea's disappearance, as she had been last seen wearing red shoes. Their home was located 7 kilometers from the party. Police had previously searched this area multiple times, and the couple was shocked that the searchers had overlooked the distinctive red shoe. Confused by the situation, she contacted the police to report her discovery. When officers arrived, they examined the area and the shoe. They confirmed that it closely resembled one belonging to the missing Chelsea. However, they found nothing else nearby. It turned out that this area had not been thoroughly searched before. The searchers were pressed for time and could not conduct a proper investigation before winter set in, and the snow later covered any potential evidence. As a result, the search was essentially ineffective. Soon after, another significant find was made. On the 15th, Eric Kassap was collecting scrap metal with friends when he stumbled upon a red wig while sorting through some debris near the railroad tracks. This wig was identical to one Chelsea had worn on the night she disappeared. Initially, Eric did not contact the police. Although he was aware of the missing girl, he had not paid attention to her accessory. A week later, he saw another news report about the search for Chelsea wearing the same outfit and realized that his discovery might be more important than he had first thought. He began to suspect it could indeed be linked to her disappearance. Despite his initial hesitation, he did not report the discovery to the police right away because he was worried that his DNA might be on the costume. He eventually told his sister about the costume, and she insisted that he inform the police. A week later, Eric reported the items he had found to the sheriff's department. The police went to the location he specified and discovered a carnival costume and Chelsea's wig. As a result, Eric became the main suspect. He shared all the necessary information with the police, including his DNA samples, and maintained that he had never met Chelsea. The investigators pressed him for details, but he continued to deny any involvement. Eric agreed to take a polygraph test and passed it successfully. Meanwhile, forensic experts examined the outfit. They found that the straps had been torn off, indicating that someone had forcibly removed them from the girl, and the leggings were completely ripped. A forensic analysis of the poison ivy suit revealed brown stains that resembled blood. Further testing confirmed that the stains were indeed blood and belonged to Chelsea. By that time, over 1 million flyers had been distributed, but there was still no significant progress in the case. On April 24, 2015, John Markin was preparing his 5-hectare plot, which was densely forested. For construction, this location was close to where Chelsea's clothes had been discovered and not far from the site of a nearby rock concert. During the construction work, a bulldozer became stuck in a muddy area when the driver got out to investigate. He observed what looked like a human skeleton. He alerted the other workers, who confirmed it was indeed a badly decomposed human body without a face. Construction was immediately halted, and the frightened workers contacted the police. The driver informed the dispatchers that he had found human remains. John suspected it might be Chelsea, who was the focus of an extensive search in the vicinity. A piece of the remain clothing had been found, and the remain had light hair. When police to arrive at the scene, where they discovered a remain hidden in the underbrush and covered with branches and leaves. Right away, they were sent for forensic examination, and dental records were used to identify the body as that of Chelsea. The forensic expert concluded that Chelsea suffered a brutal death. Her murder was particularly cruel. Her jaw was severely disfigured, literally broken in two, and the bones around her eyes and nose were crushed. Many of her teeth were also knocked out. The cause of death was determined to be a head injury from a strong blow with a blunt object. Additionally, evidence indicated that she had been abused before her death. DNA from the perpetrator was found on Chelsea's body and entered into the police database. But there were no matches. Due to the poor condition of the body, more information could not be obtained. Therefore, the investigation for some time reached a dead end until 2016. When a DNA match was found in the police database, it belonged to Daniel Clay from Monroe County. His DNA was included in the database due to issues related to child support. Daniel had a troubled childhood. His mother was incarcerated shortly after his birth, and he was raised by foster parents in a local orphanage. He later developed a substance abuse problem after failing to secure stable employment. One of his former girlfriends became pregnant, but he denied paternity and did not provide child support. Daniel had a history of criminal behavior, harassment of women, and banned substance trafficking. Yet for some reason, his DNA had not been collected for the police database until now. On July 22, 2016, the police were driving the guy, who tried to escape but was caught. Daniel was taken in for questioning. Initially, he thought the police were investigating him for child support issues, but the detectives quickly shifted the focus to Chelsea's murder. He admitted to being at that Halloween party, but said he left early and denied having any connection to Chelsea, claimed he had never seen her before, of course. The police officer did not believe him, as posters of Chelsea were displayed everywhere, making it impossible for Daniel not to know about her disappearance. However, he could not explain how his DNA ended up on the clothes and body of Chelsea. Investigators started using more sophisticated techniques to gather information. They employed a good cop, bad cop approach, which led to changes in the suspect's story. He admitted that he had forgotten some details, but he claimed that at a party, he had intimate with an unknown girl. He described her as wearing some kind of suit and said he didn't get a good look at her. The suspect mentioned that he got into a car with her, and after their encounter, they parted ways. However, this statement is obtained because he mistakenly believed that male fluids were found on the remains. In fact, the police did not locate any such fluid, but they did find his skin cells on Chelsea's remains, and on the straps of the poison ivy suit, his DNA was also discovered on the leggings, which were torn along the seam. This evidence suggested that the act was not consensual, and the police had not informed him about any intimate contact with the victim. Only a small group of investigators was aware of this information. Daniel eventually admitted to the crime after the suspect changed his story multiple times. Initially, he completely denied knowing Chelsea and claimed he had not been with anyone that night. However, during another interrogation, his account shifted again. This time, Daniel stated that he did intimate with a girl he met while leaving the parking lot. She got into his car and started flirting with him, although he initially responded to her advances. He soon became aggressive during their encounter. She asked him to bite, hit, and strangle her. He complied and strangled her for several seconds. Afterward, he realized she was unresponsive despite his attempts to revive her. She had no pulse. In shock and panic, Daniel drove for about half an hour along forest roads, trying to figure out what to do. Eventually, he disposed of her body in a remote area near an abandoned site. He could not explain why her clothes were found far from the body. Overall, his story was seen as absurd and unbelievable. Leading no one to trust his account, Daniel created an elaborate web of lies that ultimately led the police to lose patience and charge him with the murder of Chelsea. He claimed her death was an accidental result of a moment of passion, insisting on his innocence until the end. However, the medical examiner contradicted his claims, stating that the actual cause of death was a blow to the head from a blunt object, exposing his entire narrative as false. Daniel's girlfriend testified in court, saying she had never seen any signs of cruelty in him and found it hard to believe he could commit such an act. Meanwhile, another woman revealed that Daniel had confessed to her about the murder. The prosecutor argued that, on the night of the incident, Daniel spotted Chelsea walking alone and defenseless. He deceived her into getting into his car, then abused and brutally beat her to death. They was unable to clarify why the girl's suit and wig were found in one location. One shoe was found in another, and her body was discovered in yet another place. There were many unanswered questions in this case, but the key point is that Chelsea's body was recovered and the perpetrator was apprehended. To counter Daniel's false testimony, a special dummy was used to demonstrate how someone could be strangled for a few seconds right in front of the jury. It was shown that his claim was false because, in reality, it takes more than 3 minutes of pressure on the neck to cause death, which left a strong impact on the jury. Additionally, the prosecutor reiterated the injuries inflicted on Chelsea by Daniel. The brutality of the killer was evident in the manner in which he caused these injuries. It became clear that such a heinous act could not have been committed by chance. Daniel was found guilty of both abuse and murder, resulting in a life sentence without the possibility of parole, along with an additional 75 years for other acts of violence against women. Incredibly, Leanda surprisingly revealed in a media interview that she has forgiven her daughter's killer. She even gifted him a Bible. which he promised to keep. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Samantha and Tessara Crespi. David Crespi comes from a family known for its success and respect. He is from Sacramento, California, and both he and his brother, along with their father, graduated from California State University. David earned an accounting degree with honors in 1983. His older brother, John, is the pride of the family, having become a professor of economics at Kansas State University. With his excellent academic performance, David easily found a job at a local bank, where he quickly rose to the position of CFO. However, the bank eventually closed. He then worked as a manager at a mortgage company in Sacramento. David has 2 children from his first marriage. However, his life took a difficult turn when his first wife died of a brain tumor. David devoted himself to providing for his children during this trying time. Fortunately, he soon met Kim, a woman he had known since college. Their friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship, and they began living together in 1994. Kim married David and adopted his children. In 1997, they welcomed a son, and 4 years later, they had twins, Tessara and Samantha. In total, David has 5 children with 2 women. In 2001, David moved to a new and promising bank, prompting his family to relocate to Matthews, a small town in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina. By 2006, David Crespi was a vice president at a bank and lived with his family in a comfortable 3-story house in a prosperous area of Matthews. They had lived in this quiet neighborhood for nearly 5 years, which was considered an ideal place to raise children. The family shared a strong, loving bond and maintained a warm relationship with one another. David was regarded as a caring and active family man. They were actively involved in their local church, where David served on the finance committee. To many, it seemed that David had achieved his dream. What appeared to be a happy life actually concealed deeper problems. From a young age, David struggled with mental health issues. On the surface, he seemed to be a kind, devoted, successful, hard-working, and intelligent husband and father. However, he often suffered from severe bouts of depression that would come and go without warning. His condition worsened after the death of his first wife, but it only began to improve when Kim entered his life. She did her best to support him, and they both believed that this would help him overcome his challenges. Unfortunately, it was not enough. David's mental health issues began when he was 20 years old. At that time, he faced typical challenges in love and difficulties in planning for the future, which left him in a state of sadness. Adult life turned out to be more difficult than he had anticipated. Despite this, David still managed to excel in everything he did and worked tirelessly, not realizing that his success came at a high cost. As a young man, David did not seek help and preferred to solve problems on his own. As an adult, his depression often stemmed from the increased demands of his job and the responsibilities he assumed. His family was aware of his difficulties, and his colleagues noticed when he occasionally fell into a state of depression. However, David usually recovered quite quickly. There were no serious consequences for his work life. People understood his situation. He could take a day off, but his colleagues covered for him and provided sick leave when necessary. Their support seemed justified because, while his depression was in remission, David excelled in his field. The situation became increasingly serious. David was a devout Catholic, as was his entire family, according to his faith. End life was considered a sin. Despite this belief, David frequently contemplated end life during his time as vice president and even attempted it several times without success. During this period, David chose to spend time outdoors, searching for a suitable place to end his life instead of working. His wife tried to intervene and save him during these moments. After each attempt, David promised his family that he would not try to commit end life again. David struggled with depression that he could not control. Simply promising himself not to harm himself did not help him dispel his dark thoughts. His frustration grew. Instead of feeling like harming himself, he began to have thoughts about harming others. One time, when David and Kim were stopped at a traffic light, he seriously considered driving into a crowd. His wife thought he was joking. Unaware of how sincere his feelings were at this time, David tried several prescription medications, but they were ineffective. His attempts to deal with his mental health issues on his own made him paranoid and withdrawn. He became increasingly anxious about losing his job and going bankrupt. Often imagining the worst-case scenarios, Kim encouraged him to see a psychiatrist, who prescribed him antidepressants. David agreed and committed to the treatment regimen the doctor gave him. David had been on one medication for years, but it caused him to gain weight, which frustrated him. Annoyed by this side effect, he decided to stop taking the medication and try something else. He returned to the psychiatrist, hoping to adjust his treatment regimen for better results. By 2006, he was very familiar with his mental health problems, which had become more frequent and intense during these times. He was haunted by thoughts of harming others. David often thought about ending his life voluntarily, but because of his promise not to harm himself, he considered harming others instead. Although he saw his doctor regularly, he never revealed these feelings. Hoping that a prescription medication would help him manage his difficulties, he feared losing everything he had built. He understood that if his doctor knew about his obsessive thoughts, it could lead to serious consequences, such as hospitalization, loss of his job, or separation from his wife and children. He tried not to think about harming others and fought against these thoughts. David's last appointment with a psychiatrist was on January 19, 2006. Shortly before the tragic events occurred, the psychiatrist prescribed new medication, believing that David was struggling with sleep problems and anxiety. He had also recently changed his previous medication, which could cause weight gain. The psychiatrist did not notice anything unusual. David was very good at hiding his emotions and preferred to rely on himself. On the morning of January 20, 2006, David's family was at home. Kim, David, and their 5-year-old twins, Samantha and Tessera, whom David adored, were all together. David was on sick leave due to his battle with depression. At that time, everything seemed normal, and there was no sign that anything was wrong. At 11:30 a.m., David received a call from his mother. It was a routine check-in. She was aware of his mental health issues and called at the same time every day to see how he was doing, and if he needed any support. They talked for about 15 minutes, during which David reassured her that everything was fine. His 3 older children were at school at the time at 12:15 p.m., while Samantha and Tessera were having lunch. Kim was looking after them. She felt confident that nothing would happen to the children because David loved them very much. She believed that they would be safe with him. Kim had gone out to get a haircut after lunch. David worked on the computer, but then took a break to spend time with his daughters. He suggested they play hide and seek, and they scattered to find hiding places around the house. David went into the kitchen and laid out some knives on the table. He then began to search for the twins. He saw Samantha first. She was smiling and unaware of the dark thoughts in his mind. Deciding to end the game, he quietly took her to the kitchen. Suddenly, he picked her up and placed her on the kitchen table. He took a knife and began to attack Samantha. The little girl screamed and struggled, and then she stopped breathing, hearing strange noises. Tessera came out of hiding and saw her father attacking Samantha. Even though she was only 5 years old, she sensed that something terrible was happening. Fearing for her own safety, she hid on the second floor of the house. Unfortunately, Tessera was easily discovered in the bathroom of the master bedroom. The little girl begged David not to hurt her, but David ignored her cries. He pinned her to the floor and began to attack her with a knife. Tessera cried, screamed, and fought fiercely against her father, but all in vain. Once a loving father, he had now left his 2 young daughters lifeless. David then considered end life, but ultimately decided against it. Instead of running away, he showered, changed clothes, and called 911 during the call. He calmly confessed that he had killed his two daughters and attempted CPR. Although he believed it was useless, as they were already dead, he answered the police's questions clearly. Providing his details, his phone number, and his wife's location, he appeared calm rather than distressed and requested emergency assistance, expressing his desire to end his life. After the call ended, the police quickly arrived at David's home. David's home is located on Creek Road in an affluent area, where his family lives in a villa. It was surprising that such a tragic event could happen in a place known for its prosperity. When the police arrived, David was found sitting outside the house, waiting for them and for his wife Kim, who was still at the beauty salon. He surrendered and accompanied the police back to the house. Kim later returned home and learned of the situation. Initially, Kim feared that her husband had committed end life, but when she learned the truth, she was shocked. The police placed David under 24-hour surveillance and provided him with specialized clothing designed to prevent self-harm, removing any dangerous objects from his immediate vicinity. The case attracted considerable public attention, as a prominent and wealthy man faced the possibility of the death penalty, which is legal in North Carolina. It is reported that David may reach a plea deal with the prosecution if he admits to 2 counts of first-degree murder. The prosecutor's office will agree not to pursue the death penalty. As a result, David could face life in prison without parole. Many feel that this sentence is too lenient for the deaths of Samantha and Tessara, 2 innocent girls. During questioning, David mentioned that he had been dealing with depression and suggested that his actions were influenced by a new medication prescribed by his doctor. David has spoken openly about his illness, seemingly trying to shift the prosecutor's focus to his condition, which he believes caused the tragic events. He stated that he had struggled with depression for years and had finally reached a point where he could no longer bear it. Over the past few months, his condition had worsened significantly. He revealed that he had intended to harm strangers with his car, but also admitted that he had darker thoughts about his wife and 5 children while they slept. Amid his financial struggles, he was overwhelmed by the fear of losing his job as a bank vice president. He felt disillusioned by his inability to provide for his wife and children, which left him feeling unstable. On that day, he heard voices in his head telling him that there was no future, that everything was ruined, and that he had to kill his daughters. David believed that the twins were also suffering from depression, which was why they were not attending kindergarten. He eventually came to the disturbing conclusion that killing Samantha and Tessara might ease his own pain and prevent his mental health from deteriorating further. Kim shocked many by forgiving and supporting David. Despite his violent actions, she felt the death penalty was too harsh and believed it would not bring her children back to life. Despite her heartache over the tragedy, Kim has repeatedly told the media that executing David would only cause further harm to the family. She expressed relief that her husband did not commit end life before the police arrived. Kim believes that his actions stemmed from mental health issues that he could not control, including severe depression and psychosis. She remains hopeful that he will eventually recover and return to the loving and calm person he once was. The Supreme Court is reviewing the death penalty. Some believe that David deserves the death penalty for killing his 2 children. However, the prosecutor was reluctant to pursue this option because it would be difficult to convince all 12 jurors. As a result, the inquest continues to investigate more disturbing evidence beyond David's confession. David's attorneys have prepared a strong argument against the death penalty, emphasizing his long history of severe mental illness, which has spanned more than 2 decades. Prior to this tragic event, David had no criminal record. He was a devoted family man and a respectable citizen. There was no history of aggressive behavior in his past, and he had never harmed his wife or children. As Kim and other family members confirmed, the defense argued that on January 20, David's mental illness led to the tragic deaths of his two children. The attorneys, along with all of David's relatives, believed that he was experiencing a psychotic episode at the time of the incident. Kim stated that he had been working hard for years to control his mental health issues and had been successful. They had consulted with professionals, and he had been prescribed medication. However, Kim felt that the treatment he received was not effective enough over the years. The family continued to seek help and adhered to the treatment plan, ensuring that he took his medication as prescribed. A psychological evaluation revealed that David had more serious mental health problems than initially thought, rather than just depression and anxiety. He was diagnosed with psychosis. It became clear that the medications prescribed were not appropriate for his condition. Several years before the incident, David had been diagnosed with genital cancer and had been successfully treated. On the day of the tragedy, he was scheduled for a follow-up appointment. His attorneys presented medical documents showing that he had been prescribed several medications, one for depression, another for anxiety, and a third to help him sleep. While on the antidepressants, David gained more than 20 kg and had difficulty breathing, which forced him to stop taking the medication. His doctor then prescribed another medication in January, but it did not resolve his sleep problems. He finally returned to the doctor just one day before the murder. Medical records show that David's treating physician removed his sedative and sleeping pills and prescribed a different sleeping pill instead. After this change, David began to notice alterations in his mental state, impairing his ability to think clearly. The day before the twins were murdered, he became delirious and acted erratically, experiencing extreme mood swings. This exacerbated his anxiety about not being able to provide for his family. However, management at the bank where he worked described David as having an excellent work record, with no indication that he was in danger of losing his job. Despite this reassurance, David's mental state left him vulnerable to irrational fears. He worried that he might not receive a bonus from the bank, recalling that he had earned $45 the year before, but doubting that he would receive the same amount again. However, he later discovered that the bank had approved a large bonus during this difficult time. David was not in a clear state of mind and could not think rationally. While awaiting the hearing in the case of Samantha and Tessara's murder, Kim visited her husband frequently. She repeatedly expressed her deep faith and love for him, believing that one day they would overcome the challenges caused by his illness and avoid such terrible tragedies. Kim only knew David as a kind and loving person. She believed that inadequate treatment led to the deaths of their children and the pain the family endured afterward. The scene of the crime was tragic. It is hard to imagine the pain Kim felt when she returned from the beauty salon to find the police and paramedics carrying her daughter's bodies. In fact, David's troubled thoughts began long before these tragic events. At the time, David was being treated with prescription medications. The initial treatment regimen helped control his negative thoughts to some extent, but things changed when adjustments were made. Experts later concluded that the new drugs had caused acute psychosis, according to David's own confession. When Samantha and Tessara were only 1 year old, he had thoughts of harming them. One day, while walking with the girls in the backyard, he hid a weapon in his pocket. Fortunately, he regained his composure and realized that he needed to stop. He convinced himself that he could overcome his challenges and that his family's financial situation would improve. David later returned to the doctor, but avoided discussing his thoughts of harming his children. Instead, he vaguely mentioned having bad thoughts about harming others and expressed his fear of losing his children and family by withholding information. He likely misled his doctors. As a result, he was prescribed medications that he had taken previously, which led to weight gain. In his confession, David admitted that, for many years, he had often felt like harming a family member, but he had been able to control these impulses until now. He believed that he had everything under control and could never actually act on the harmful thoughts. David recounted that after his wife got a haircut one morning, he was working on his computer when the obsessive thought returned. It urged him to kill his children. He thought that if he did so, all his worries would disappear because he would have no one to care for. David realized that his mental problems were related to his actions. During his initial interrogations, David responded coldly. When asked why he killed both girls instead of just one, he explained that because they were twins. They needed to die together, however. The situation changed when David received comprehensive treatment. It was only then that he understood the severity of his crime. He admitted that he had never shared his thoughts about killing his children. His wife, Kim, did not fully understand the gravity of her husband's condition. David's doctor was not held responsible after the tragedy. Citing David's failure to provide accurate information, the doctor was unaware of many of David's hidden struggles, which prevented him from fully assessing the situation. Furthermore, all medications have side effects that can vary from person to person, and doctors cannot predict such severe reactions. David received support and treatment while in prison, which had a positive impact on him. During his preliminary hearing, he began to understand the extent of his responsibility for his actions and fully admitted his guilt. Psychiatrists confirmed that he was fit to stand trial. David's family was shocked by what had happened. His father had seen him just a week before the tragic event. He appeared healthy and showed no signs of impending disaster. On July 30, 2006, the hearings took place. Ultimately, David Crespi reached a plea deal and pleaded guilty. While the prosecutor's office chose not to pursue the death penalty, this decision caused considerable controversy, dividing public opinion. With one group calling for the death penalty, the trial was brief, and the jury sentenced David Crespi to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The trial was short but filled with deep emotion. David's family cried, and he struggled to hold back tears as he came to terms with the pain his actions had caused. He felt he would be haunted by guilt for the rest of his life. Even the police officers who had arrived at the scene that day were in tears. A young officer went upstairs and discovered Tessera's body. He checked for a pulse, hoping she was still alive. The police carried the injured child down the stairs, praying that she would survive. However, when the doctors examined the body, it was clear that she had died from her injuries. What the police felt as a pulse may have been his own heartbeat. This story raises many questions. Was David truly unaware of what was happening at the time? Were his actions influenced by a psychotic episode? He appeared normal when he talked to his mother and wife and went to work. However, his actions were completely different. When his wife, Kim, left the house, everything seemed normal. But he caused a massacre right afterward. He considered end life, but decided against it and tried to calm down. So why didn't he try to control himself in the moment when he killed the child? Welcome back to our channel. Today, we will explore a new case. The case of Ashley Fallis. Ashley Fallis married her high school sweetheart right after finishing school. But their marriage lasted only a few years. During that time, she had 2 daughters. When the relationship ended, Ashley, just over 20 years old, she returned to her hometown with her children to live near her mother, Jenna, and stepfather, Joel. She found work as a respiratory therapist. Helping patients with breathing and heart issues became the sole provider for her family. Life was difficult, as her ex-husband was not involved in raising their daughters. Despite these hardships, Ashley was described by her mother and stepfather as cheerful, kind, and funny. She and her mother were particularly close, sharing a bond like best friends. In April 2007, Ashley met Tom Fallis, who seemed responsible and ready for family life. Unlike her ex-husband, their relationship progressed quickly, and a few months later, Ashley became pregnant with her 3rd child. 9 months later, they welcomed a son, Blake. 2 weeks after Blake's birth, Ashley and Tom got married. Tom also adopted Ashley's older daughters, however. Ashley's mother and stepfather felt she had rushed into having another child, like marrying Tom and entrusting him with her daughters despite knowing him for only a short time. The family settled in Evans, a small town about an hour north of Denver, Colorado. Ashley continued her work as a respiratory therapist, while Tom took a job as a correctional officer with the Weld County Sheriff's Office. Jenna admitted she found Tom strange from the start. She said, "I didn't like his mindset. He always thought he was right about everything." Tom came across as aggressive, hot-tempered, and controlling toward Ashley. Jenna often tried to convince Ashley to leave her relationship with Tom. Things took a dramatic turn when their youngest son, Blake, was diagnosed with hydrocephalus, a condition causing fluid to build up in the brain. Ashley became focused on researching treatment options for Blake, who had to undergo several major surgeries and required constant care. The stress severely affected Ashley, leaving her depressed, anxious, and irritable. Caring for Blake's health also put a heavy strain on Ashley and Tom's relationship, leading to frequent arguments. By the summer of 2011, Ashley started contemplating divorce. However, Tom encouraged her to seek help from a psychotherapist. After starting medication, Ashley's mental health improved, and their relationship appeared to stabilize. By December 2011, the Fallis family decided to host a New Year's Eve party at their home, inviting family and friends. The preparations for the holiday provided a much distraction from their challenges. Just a few days before the celebration, Ashley discovered she was pregnant again. Filled with joy, she chose to stop taking her medication to protect the baby. For a brief moment, it seemed things were improving for the Fallis family, and thoughts of divorce faded away. Unfortunately, their happiness was short-lived. On the afternoon of December 31, 2011, Ashley started bleeding and feared she was having a miscarriage. Despite her worry, she continued getting ready for the party. That evening, guests started arriving at the Fallis' home, including Tom's parents, Ashley's mother and stepfather, her uncle, and several family friends. The atmosphere was lively as everyone enjoyed chatting and celebrating together. However, tension between Tom and Ashley became evident. They exchanged harsh remarks and occasionally argued during the evening. Ashley confided in a friend, saying she always knew that Tom hates her. Despite the conflict, Ashley and Tom still celebrated the new year with their guests as the party wound down and people began leaving. Ashley's uncle offered her illegal substances. Tom overheard this and became enraged. He scolded Ashley and accused her of unacceptable behavior. In the heat of the argument, Tom revealed to everyone that Ashley's fourth pregnancy had ended earlier that day. He shouted that Ashley always followed her mother's advice rather than thinking for herself. After the quarrel, Ashley went to put her children to bed while her parents prepared to leave at 12:40 a.m. Ashley stepped outside to say goodbye to her mother and stepfather, noticing that Ashley seemed upset. Her mother, Jenna, asked what was wrong. Ashley responded, "It's okay, Mom. It's just Tom. He's like that." She hugged her parents goodbye while Tom stood on the porch, waving as they drove away. Afterward, Ashley and Tom went back inside the house, where the atmosphere was tense, following a brief argument about illegal substances. The two went their separate ways. Tom went into the wardrobe to change when he suddenly heard the sound of a weapon being loaded in the bedroom. Knowing Ashley kept a weapon under her mattress, Tom shouted, asking what was going on, and hurried toward the bedroom. Before he could reach her, he heard the explosion. Tom rushed into the room and found Ashley lying on the floor, smoke lingering in the air. She had been injured in the back of the head. In a panic, Tom grabbed her, pressed his hand against the wound to stop the bleeding, and called 911 at 12:50 a.m. as Ashley lay unconscious but still alive. Tom gently closed her eyes and spoke to her, saying, "I'm here. You won't go. You won't leave me." In the early hours of New Year's Day, 2012, the Evans Police Department responded to an emergency call from the Fallis family home. The neighborhood was known to be safe, with low crime rates. Upon arrival, paramedics rushed Ashley to the hospital due wound to her head. Unfortunately, her injuries were critical, and Ashley passed away a few hours later. The police detained Tom at the scene. He was covered in blood and claimed that his wife had self-harm. He also mentioned that Ashley and her mother had attended a party earlier that evening, and Ashley had been very upset, however. Suspicions quickly arose when a neighbor reported hearing screams from the house. The neighbor stated she heard Ashley screaming, begging Tom to get off her and let her go. During his interrogation, Tom denied the accusations. He stated that he did not witness his wife pulling the trigger and denied assaulting her. At any time during the interrogation, investigators asked Tom to undress so they could examine his body. They found fresh scratches on his chest. Tom explained the scratches by claiming he had injured himself while shaving his chest for the first time, which caused itching throughout the questioning. Tom appeared visibly nervous and anxious, but consistently denied having any physical contact with Ashley in the phallus bedroom. Significant evidence suggested that a conflict had occurred. Photographs had been torn off the wall, hinting at a fight, and divorce papers were found displayed on the wall. Ashley also had bruises on her legs, according to Ashley's mother. Tom had been very angry with them when they said goodbye at the party. At the end of the party, he even shouted, "I want you all to die." Despite this evidence, Tom was released without charges. After the interrogation, Ashley's parents were heartbroken and couldn't understand why he was released so easily. Jenna was convinced that her daughter would never willingly leave her children. Ashley loved life and had plans for the future. On January 5, 2012, the medical examiner concluded that Ashley had died from a weapon wound to the back of the head and ruled it self-harm. 2 months later, the case was officially closed. Ashley's grieving parents struggled to accept this conclusion. Eventually, Tom and his children moved to Indiana, where he pursued graduate school. Despite their suspicions, Ashley's parents tried to maintain a good relationship with Tom to stay connected with their grandchildren. However, they never stopped believing that their daughter's death was caused by Tom. 2 years passed until, in early 2014, a local television reporter, Justin Joseph, began his own investigation into the Ashley phallus case. Joseph spent months interviewing neighbors and investigating the case. After 4 months, the case took a significant turn. A young neighbor of Tom, his name is Nick Glover, revealed an important detail to Joseph. Nick and his mother, Kathy Glover, claimed he heard Tom yelling at his parents outside the house, saying, "God, I can't believe I did this," when his parents asked, "What are you saying?" Tom reportedly yelled, "I attacked her." Nick had informed the police immediately after the tragedy, and his statement was written down. However, no mention of Nick Glover's and Kathy account was found in the official police report. Joseph's report also uncovered another person who confirmed that Tom had confessed. A local police was present at the scene of the tragedy stated that Tom admitted to attack Ashley. Another neighbor also told the reporter that, on the night of the incident, she had called to the police, saying Tom attacked his wife. However, the police report misrepresented this information, stating instead that a woman had called to report that Ashley had self-harm. She also told the police that she had heard Ashley screaming from the phallus family home, saying, "Leave me alone." Despite this, at that time, the neighbor was not questioned further, which was considered a serious omission since she was a key witness that night. Ashley's parents believed the police had rushed to close the case and blamed Ashley for her own death. Despite the circumstantial evidence, thanks to Joseph's investigative work, Chief Rick Brandt began to reevaluate the case and the actions of his officers, who had quickly hushed it up. This time, the Fort Collins Police Department took over the investigation. They considered the testimonies of the neighbors who heard Ashley screaming. Tom continued to deny his involvement in Ashley's death, maintaining that she had pulled the trigger herself on New Year's Eve. Curiously, more than 2 years after Ashley's death, Tom handed over to the police what he claimed was a suicide note written by Ashley. The note read, "Dear Tom, I am sorry for your pain. I am a loser in everything. I don't even love my daughters and son. I love you, but I just can't stand this life anymore." In November 2014, Tom Phallus was charged with the death of Ashley Phallus. He was detained and arrested in Indiana after 3 years of freedom, thinking he had escaped justice. In March 2016, a trial was held against Tom. During the trial, Tom's lawyer argued that he could not have killed his beloved wife, the mother of his 3 children. The lawyer claimed that Ashley had been struggling with mental health issues. He presented documents showing that Ashley had been diagnosed with a mental illness in the summer of 2011. The defense argued that she was impulsive, prone to self-destruction, and had been very drunk on the night of her death. They also claimed that she had suffered a miscarriage on New Year's Eve, further contributing to her distress. Ashley's uncle, however, stated that their family did not believe Ashley had taken her self-harm. They were convinced that Tom was responsible for her death. Ashley's therapist also insisted that his patient had no self-destructive tendencies. He confirmed that she was taking certain medications. However, the doctor did not know that. In addition to them, she was prescribed prescription medicine from other specialists. Ashley apparently hid another important thing from the doctor: information, including the alleged suicide notes she wrote. It turned out that Ashley had written 2 similar notes, one of which was dated July 24, 2011. Ashley's mother, Jenna, insisted that her daughter was fine. But Tom behaved inappropriately that night. He was overly angry and aggressive toward her and toward Ashley. Jenna said that at the end of the party, she watched as Tom walked up the stairs, stood right in front of Ashley, and told Ashley, "I hate you all, and I wish you all died." Then he went into the bedroom and slammed the door loudly. Rick also testified at the trial, confirming that he heard Tom confess to his parents that he attacked his wife. However, his parents denied this information and fully supported their son. A forensic expert who spent 400 hours studying the case explained to the jury where Ashley's head should have been when the explosion rang out. The expert claimed Ashley pulled the trigger herself. The prosecution called a second world-renowned forensic expert, who told the jury that he had come to the opposite conclusion from the previous medical examiner. In his opinion, Tom was next to Ashley at the time of the explosion, and most likely, there was a struggle between the spouses for the weapon, in which Tom won. The jury took only 3.5 hours to reach their verdict. Tom was found not guilty of second-degree murder and of all less serious crimes. Tom was free again. He refused to give any comments to journalists and the media. The jury explained that they believed that Ashley was mentally ill, which is why she self-harmed. Ashley's parents still don't believe that their daughter could abandon 3 children and voluntarily end her life. They are very upset that Tom was released. Ashley's 2 daughters and son remained under the care of Tom and live in Indiana, and Ashley's parents, Jenna and Joel, received the legal right to see their grandchildren. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of David Katz. The Katz family lived in Baltimore, Maryland, and were relatively well off. Richard Katz and Elizabeth were highly educated professionals. Richard worked as an engineer at NASA, designing space technology, while Elizabeth worked in pharmacology. Together, they raised 2 sons, Brandon and David, in the early years of their marriage. The family enjoyed a happy and loving environment, but as time went on, the boys grew and everything started to change. In 2006, Richard and Elizabeth decided to separate. David Katz struggled with severe mental health issues from a young age. Between the ages of 9 and 12, he visited numerous psychiatrists who prescribed him strong medications, including antidepressants and antipsychotics. His parents' disagreement over how to manage his condition was a major factor in their decision to separate. Brandon and David faced significant challenges during this difficult period in their lives. His classmates described David as shy, quiet, and antisocial. David kept to himself, rarely made friends, and preferred solitude. He was also deeply passionate about video games, spending most of his free time in his room playing Madden NFL, a sports simulation game. Madden NFL, named after coach and sports commentator John Madden, is a popular series of American football video games. With a new edition released annually, David graduated from Hammond High School in 2011. He enrolled at the University of Maryland to study environmental science. However, he showed little interest in his studies or pursuing a career. Instead, he became increasingly absorbed in the virtual world. Dedicating almost all his time to gaming, David's commitment to his hobby paid off, as he developed exceptional skills in playing Madden NFL over the years. In June 2017, David Katz competed in a professional gaming tournament for the first time, using the nickname Bread. He entered the Madden Championship and won the title. Initially as the 7 seed, David was seen as an underdog. However, he surprised everyone with his skills, defeating his opponents and earning recognition. In an interview, he confidently stated, "I don't consider myself the 7th seed. I consider myself the best player. And I liked that I was able to prove that." Fellow players congratulated him on his victory and wished him success in future competitions. David was ecstatic about his win and felt on top of the world. Also taking home a $10 cash prize, he continued to enter several other tournaments, but did not achieve similar success despite the loss. He remained undeterred. He built a career in the gaming world, earning an income and establishing a strong reputation in the community. Today, many gamers look up to him as an inspiration for pursuing a career in gaming. David's online popularity grew, but things were not as bright for him in real life. David was born in 1993, and his childhood was marked by challenges. Over the first 16 years of his life, 26 calls were made to the police from the Katz family home, mainly due to domestic disputes and conflicts. Despite the medications, his condition showed little improvement. 2 years later, in 2007, he was hospitalized at Shepherd Pratt Psychiatric Hospital. During his stay, doctors increased the dosage of his antidepressants. That year, David was treated at 4 different psychiatric hospitals. By this time, David's parents were divorced, and he was alternating between living at his mother's and father's homes, along with his older brother, Brandon. However, David spent most of his time with his mother. He confided in close friends that he hated living with her and wished he could live with his father. However, according to custody court documents, this was not permitted. Elizabeth twice packed David's belongings into a suitcase and forced him to leave the house. One of these incidents occurred on Mother's Day in 2007. That same year, he was enrolled in a treatment program for troubled teens. Spending several months in the wilderness, Elizabeth admitted him to the program without seeking approval from her ex-husband. 2 years later, on December 22, 2009, David wrote a letter to the judge while his parents' custody battle was still ongoing. In the letter, he expressed his feelings. "Dear Judge, today is my 1/6th birthday. I live with my mom, but I've wanted to live with my dad for a long time. My mom has called the police about 20 times over minor issues, like me being a little late getting home. She also drinks and yells at me, poking me with her finger and refusing to leave me alone. In the past, she used to hit me. She takes my belongings just because she feels like it and has sent me to psychiatric hospitals twice for no real reason. I can't talk to her because I see her more than anyone else, and she'll most likely just yell at me again. She lies all the time." When David became an adult, his medical visits significantly decreased, though the reason for this remains unclear. However, it is known that he continued to struggle with mental health issues. He rarely bathed, sometimes going weeks without washing, and often spent entire days playing video games, especially his favorite, Madden NFL. He would stay up until 4 a.m. and frequently paced in circles around the house. David was diagnosed with dysthymia, a chronic mood disorder characterized by low energy and a persistent, mild depressive state. Unlike major depression, dysthymia lasts much longer. People with this condition often mistake their symptoms as part of their personality, and only a qualified specialist can provide an accurate diagnosis. In addition to dysthymia, David was also diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, a condition defined by frequent anger, irritability, and defiance toward authority figures. For David, these authority figures were his parents. Over time, David became increasingly detached from reality. He spent almost all his time online and rarely interacted with people face to face. While he was recognized as a talented Madden player, other gamers found him socially awkward and withdrawn at tournaments. He often made blunt, insulting remarks, avoided eye contact, and showed little to no emotion. David refused to engage with other players, did not seek friendships, and declined to shake hands with opponents. Regardless of whether he won or lost, David was always considered an unusual person, but no one ever felt uncomfortable around him. That all suddenly changed in the summer of 2018. Good Luck, Have Fun Game Bar, an arcade venue at the Jacksonville Landing Indoor Market, hosted a Madden NFL 19 video game tournament on August 26, 2018, with approximately 130 to 150 participants and spectators in attendance. At around 1 p.m., David was eliminated from the tournament after losing to his main competitor, Elijah Clayton. David was visibly upset after the loss and refused to shake Elijah's hand. His frustration stemmed not only from the defeat, but also from a contentious history between the two. Elijah had frequently mocked David for his social awkwardness before the tournament. David had written a guide to help players improve their Madden skills, but Elijah shared it online without permission, depriving David of the opportunity to monetize his work. They had also had a tense incident earlier at another tournament when they both called a taxi to the airport. When the car arrived, Elijah quickly got in, closed the door in David's face, and left alone. Back to the event on August 26. After losing to his longtime rival Elijah, David left the game bar and went to a nearby pizzeria. While there, he removed his sunglasses, placed them on the edge of a table, abruptly stood up, and left at 1:30 p.m. David returned to the event. Where the tournament was still ongoing, he pulled a weapon from his backpack and dropped the backpack on the floor. None of the gamers present realized the tragedy that was about to unfold, and the entire event was being streamed live on social platforms. David aimed his weapon directly at Elijah. At that moment, the live stream camera briefly focused on Elijah, showing a red laser dot from David's weapon sight on his chest. Seconds later, as the camera switched back to the game, David attacked him. Elijah was struck by 3 bullets, one in the chest, one in the forehead, and one in the right eye. He died instantly. Still seated in his chair after killing Elijah, David began attacking others in the game bar. The attack lasted about 20 seconds before David turned the weapon on himself and ended his own life. By 1:35 p.m., the first responders, a fire brigade conducting training exercises near the game bar, arrived at the scene of the tragedy and provided aid to the victims. In total, David Katz injured 12 people. 2 of them, along with David, died, while the remaining 10 suffered non-fatal injuries. The victims who were killed were Elijah Clayton and Taylor Robertson, who was attacked in the back as he tried to flee from the game bar. Elijah Clayton, 22 years old, known in the gaming community by the nickname True Boy. From Woodland Hills, California, he was a high school graduate, played football, and had a passion for video games. Initially, Elijah had not planned to attend the Madden NFL 19 championship, but changed his mind at the last minute and decided to participate. Taylor Robertson, 27 years old, from Ballard, West Virginia, is a professional gamer known by the nickname Spot Me Please. Outside of gaming, he worked as an accountant and credit analyst at a major bank and had a family. During the investigation, police discovered that David had severe mental health issues. Detectives initially believed his motive was rage over losing to a rival. However, it was later revealed that David had been planning the crime 2 weeks before the tournament. He legally purchased 2 firearms equipped with high-precision sights in his home state of Maryland. David stored the firearms in his car and brought them to the tournament. He carried a weapon on his belt, which he never used, and kept another weapon in his backpack, which he used to kill 2 gamers before taking his own life. Police were puzzled by how David was able to purchase the weapons so easily, as this appeared to be a clear violation by the firearms seller. Soon, details about David Katz's troubled life came to light. It was revealed that he had been prescribed strong antidepressants and antipsychotic medications from an early age and had been treated in psychiatric hospitals multiple times. This was likely a significant factor in the case. David was far younger than recommended when he started using these drugs, sadly. Before the tragedy happened, no one could have predicted that this quiet, introverted young man could act so coldly. Perhaps the tragedy could have been prevented if the game bar had security measures like metal detectors in place. This might have stopped David from bringing weapons to the tournament so easily following the Jacksonville attack. Numerous lawsuits were filed against the organizers of the Madden NFL 19 event, the game bar owner, the pizzeria, and the seller who sold David Katz 2 weapons. All parties were held accountable. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the case of William Bradford Bishop. On March 1, 1976, William Bradford Bishop Jr., a prominent employee of the United States Foreign Service, brutally murdered his wife, Annette Catherine Weiss, his mother, Lobelia Amaryllis Saint Germain, and his 3 sons are 14 years old, 10 years old, and 5 years old. This shocking crime came without warning, as there seemed to be no motive, and William, who had no history of violence, disappeared after the murders. What could have driven this respected professional to commit such a horrific act? In this discussion, we will outline a timeline of William's life and reconstruct the events of that tragic night. In order to answer this question, William was born on August 1, 1936, to Lobelia Amaryllis Saint Germain and William Bradford Bishop Sr., growing up in a wealthy family in Pasadena, California. William had a privileged childhood filled with opportunities, however. This wealth also created pressure for him to prove himself. Families with generational wealth often expect their descendants to increase the family fortune, and William became fixated on maintaining that expectation throughout his life. William had every opportunity to acquire the skills needed to succeed in high society. He was a naturally intelligent and talented boy, with a remarkable ability to learn languages and a genuine interest in exploring different cultures, which positioned him well for a career in the Foreign Service by the time he graduated from South Pasadena High School. Everyone anticipated great achievements from him. He was not only an outstanding student, but also athletic and charismatic, qualities that made him appear to be a natural leader. His impressive height of over 6 feet further enhanced his appeal, however. Beneath his seemingly perfect exterior lay a deep obsession that only a few close to him could recognize. William was an extreme perfectionist. This same drive that propelled him forward in the Foreign Service also made him quick to anger, which likely contributed to his violent outburst on the night of the incident. There was no sign of the uncontrollably violent William, at least. No one who knew him casually would say that he was violent. He graduated from Yale in 1959. The only person who may have glimpsed his true nature was his wife, Annette Catherine Weiss, whom he married a few months after college. Little is known about Annette's early life, but we do know she met William in high school when she was a freshman. It's likely that she was quickly attracted to him, as he was an athletic and charismatic junior, and they began dating shortly thereafter. Those who knew Annette described her as quite different from her outgoing husband, while William enjoyed going out and socializing. Annette preferred to stay home and care for their children. Annette has always loved children. She was a gentle and kind woman with a remarkable ability to understand what children needed, which likely made her a wonderful mother. This talent may have also helped her soothe her easily frustrated husband on various occasions. Sadly, any potential witnesses who could shed light on their marriage have long since passed away, leaving us with only testimonies and sparse evidence to piece together their life together. However, one undeniable fact about William recently came to light. He cheated on Annette, possibly with multiple other women. This detail would be crucial in reviving interest in his case decades down the line. The early years of their marriage were said to be quite happy, as high school sweethearts. They represented what true love could look like, at least if we observe the surface and ignore all the rest. After marrying Annette, William focused on building the legacy he had always envisioned. He was multilingual, speaking Italian, French, Spanish, and Serbia-Croatia, and had a genuine passion for immersing himself in other cultures. With his education from Yale, he was well suited for a role in counterintelligence shortly after their wedding. He joined the Army's 3rd Military Intelligence Battalion and was stationed in Italy for Annette. Living in Europe must have felt like a dream, coming from a middle-class background. She may not have traveled outside the country before. During the next 4 years, William earned a reputation as a dependable soldier. Reports suggest that he was promoted and received several medals before being honorably discharged in 1963. By then, he had already traveled the world and worked with classified documents, demonstrating his ability to navigate foreign environments, desperate for recognition. William decided to join the Foreign Service after leaving the U.S. Army in 1966, where he had achieved the rank of Major. His first son, William Bradford Bishop III, was born about 2 years before he left the Army. Later, Annette gave birth to another son named Brenton Germain Bishop while stationed in Italy. The family lived in cities such as Verona, Milan, and finally, Florence, where Annette had their youngest son, Geoffrey Corder Bishop, about a year after Geoffrey's birth. William was informed that his next assignment would be in Africa. William enjoyed being involved in the tumultuous times of African history, and his career was thriving. In 1974, he was promoted to Assistant Chief in the Division of Special Activities and Commercial Treaties and was invited to work at the State Department's headquarters in Washington, D.C. William was not someone who preferred to work at a desk. From the very beginning, it was clear that he wanted to be off abroad, immersed in a new culture where he could flex his knowledge of languages, whether or not the move to Africa disturbed him. Having to come back to Washington may have been even worse. This is all speculation. Of course, what he wanted more than anything else was to maintain his upper-middle-class lifestyle. William felt that his career needed to maintain that exponential growth he'd seen early on. Unfortunately, things were not shaping up how he'd hoped. After being promoted to Assistant Division Chief, William eagerly awaited another promotion that never came. At this time, he and his family moved to a home in Bethesda, Maryland, allowing his mother, Lobelia, to stay with them. Juggling the responsibilities of raising 3 kids is challenging, so Annette likely appreciated the extra help. However, we may never fully understand how William felt about his mother's presence, given how events unfolded. It's possible he felt resentment towards her living with them. Reports indicate that Lobelia often criticized William for not advancing in his career. Leading to increasing tension over time, William began facing financial troubles. His government salary was no longer sufficient to cover his bills, and he might have had to ask his mother for financial assistance, which would have deeply affected his pride. His colleagues noticed that he became increasingly irritable at work, often complaining about being overlooked for promotions he believed he deserved. While seeming to blame everyone except himself, William held a belief that he was superior to others and deserved rapid advancement. Achieving the position of assistant division chief at 38 may not have seemed impressive to him. He likely felt he should have accomplished more after spending over a decade in the Foreign Service. These thoughts, alongside other undisclosed factors, may have contributed to his gradually darkening mindset, which eventually drifted toward thoughts of homicide. An analysis of William's personal diary revealed that he was under significant stress during his 2-year stay in Washington, D.C. He complained of difficulties sleeping, and his psychiatrist prescribed a sedative called Serax, which was ineffective or at least did not help him fall asleep. It is important to note that missing doses of medications similar to Serax can lead to severe mood swings and increased agitation, especially for someone like him who is already facing personal challenges. Since Serax wasn't helping his insomnia, it is likely that William stopped taking it, consequently becoming emotionally unstable. The lack of sleep took a toll on him, and he also mentioned struggling with chronic depression, which medication could not alleviate. Additionally, various life events contributed to the emotional turmoil he was experiencing, a turmoil that would eventually drive him toward profound violence. Reports indicate that William was facing an impending Internal Revenue Service audit due to significant financial issues in his tax filings. This situation likely added stress to his personal life. He dealt with his mother's ongoing criticism about his career stagnation, along with his own frustration at being stuck in a desk job. He set his sights on a possible promotion that would send him back abroad. But this created further tension with his wife. His controlling personality may have made it difficult for Annette to fully enjoy living in different countries. Reports suggest she had begun studying art at the University of Maryland, which further upset William. He preferred that Annette stay home to care for their children while he pursued his duties in the Foreign Service, with their youngest child, now 5, and their oldest nearing adulthood. Annette might have been eager to take a step back from parenting and focus on herself for a change. Lobelia's presence made this possible. But it also meant that William was losing control over his family, something a control freak like him dreaded. Then, on March 1, 1976, he learned that the promotion he desperately wanted, the one he believed would solve all his problems, had been awarded to someone else. His hopes of leaving his desk job, receiving a salary increase, and proving his worth to his mother vanished. Soon after receiving the disappointing news, William informed his secretary that he felt unwell and would be going home early. The last sighting of William was outside the State Department building in the Foggy Bottom area of Washington, D.C. His colleague, Roy Harrell, noted that William looked very restless after leaving his office. The details of William's movements became unclear, but police confirmed that he withdrew all the money from his bank account. The amount he took out varied between a few hundred and a few $1,000s, highlighting how little he had after withdrawing the cash. William likely went to Montgomery Mall, where he bought a ball-peen hammer and a gas tank. He filled his car and the spare gas tank at a nearby gas station. Following that, he visited a hardware store and purchased a shovel and a pitchfork. He arrived home between 7:30 and 8 that evening. With the hammer in hand, police determined that he killed Annette first. She might have been in the kitchen preparing a meal or relaxing in the living room after the boys went to bed. It is likely that she was in the front hall when the attack occurred, Detectives later found blood in this area and in the upstairs bedrooms. William brutally killed his wife and then waited for his next victim to return home. Lobelia was out walking the family dog at the time. William may have timed his arrival based on his mother's absence, which made it easier for him to kill Annette without drawing too much attention. And the way he plotted his next moves suggests that the murders were planned, however. It's also possible he acted on impulse. The extreme violence he displayed indicates that he was not in a rational state of mind. Lobelia returned home and suffered the same fate as her daughter-in-law. William repeatedly struck his mother in the face with a hammer until she died. The boys were asleep during this time, suggesting that William may have taken the dog outside before killing Lobelia. Otherwise, the dog's barking would have woken them. William 3. Brenton and Jeffrey were all in bed when their father came upstairs holding the bloody hammer he had just used to kill his wife and mother. The boys were still asleep while William attacked them. He placed the 5 bodies in his car and drove nearly 300 miles to North Carolina. The journey would have taken all night, and by the morning of March 20, he dug a shallow grave in a swamp near the town of Columbia, disposed of his family's bodies there, covered them with gasoline, and set them on fire. With the deed now done, William was free to make his getaway after disposing of his family's remains. William traveled to Jacksonville, where he purchased tennis shoes at a local sporting goods store. This part of the story becomes more puzzling, as witnesses reported that he was not alone. He had a dog with him, and some claimed he was accompanied by a dark-skinned woman. The store owner noted that the woman seemed to be from the Caribbean and was dressed elegantly. To him, they appeared to be a charming couple, and he described William as courteous and calm. William's next destination was the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, where his car was discovered on March 18th. The car contained dog biscuits, a bloody blanket, a shotgun, an axe, and William's shaving kit with banned substances in it. The spare tire well of the trunk was covered in blood. A witness stated that the car had likely been there since at least the 5th, suggesting that William had driven for 2 or 3 hours a day as he slowly made his way to the park when William drove to Jacksonville. The smoke from his family's burning bodies attracted the attention of Forest Service workers. A forest ranger was dispatched to investigate and discovered the family's charred remains, along with a shovel. 2 of the bodies were found facing each other. Their identities remained unknown until March 10th, when a worried neighbor contacted the Bethesda police, reporting that the Bishops had been missing for a while. When the police arrived, they found blood on the porch, hallway, and bedrooms, and they later identified the Bishop family members through dental records. By the time William's car was discovered on March 18th, he had already vanished. Police attempted to track him along the Appalachian Trail, but were unsuccessful. William, an athletic man who enjoyed camping, had used his skills to gain a significant head start. He has not been located since, and the FBI removed him from their top 10 most wanted list in 2018. He is believed to be dead or living under an alias in the United States. Several other sightings have suggested he may have traveled to Switzerland and Italy, but none have been confirmed. The reasons behind William's actions remain unclear. However, in 2017, new information emerged that confirmed his history of secret affairs and the identity of a previously unknown child. Kathy Gilchrist was 18 years old when the Bishop family was murdered. This information is significant because Kathy is William's daughter. She had always known she was adopted and only learned about William when she began searching for her biological parents. Kathy was born before any of William's other children, and since she was born a year prior to his marriage to Annette, it is clear that he was definitely dating Annette at that time. This not only indicates that he cheated on Annette multiple times, but also suggests a possible motive that no one anticipated. Had Annette discovered his illegitimate daughter and confronted him, is that why William killed her and escaped? What do you think about the mysterious woman who was with him during his escape? We may never find out the answers to these questions. Do you believe William had been planning the murders from the beginning, or do you think it was a sudden decision? How did his secret daughter fit into this situation?